Yo, welcome to the show.
Live from Smitty1.com studios, it's the Fantasy Football Show. Live!
What's going on, everybody? Glad to join you here on a Thursday. Today is April 15th, 2021. A Thursday, and we've got a very special guest joining us a little bit later in the show, Mr. Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers. You might have heard of him. He's coming on probably the last hour. So we're looking at potentially 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So look for this man right here. Hopefully brings that smile, positive vibe, and we'll talk to him about some big-time fantasy football information. So do not miss the final hour of the show, or you will miss Mr. Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers. We're going to talk about some news. Don't know that there's a lot of news stuff hitting news wires today. We're done with the Deshaun Watson stuff for now until updates happen with that. So we're not going to go over that. Don't worry. But you do need to let your friends know to come on over here. So let everybody know what is up. Let me give you the link that you can spread around. Tell them to let me know that you sent them, and I will put it on the screen. And that will give you a little bit of a shout out. What's up, Russ? What's up, everybody? What's going on, Leonardo, Nick, Okafor, Russ, Juju, 49er Media, Jake. If I missed anybody, I apologize that came in early. Let's get to some of the news, I guess, that's floating around the NFL. One, there's been some Falcons signings and running back situations, like kind of Patterson, but Hill or Ito Smith being released. Hill's gone, right? So you have one guy sitting atop the depth chart in Atlanta, and that is Mike Davis. Now, where do we rank Mike Davis in fantasy football heading into 2021? Very tough thing to figure. I probably have Mike Davis in a very safe low-end running back one position. They still could add a running back, but they certainly look like they're going to be leaning on him contract-wise based on how he played in 2020. I believe they believe that he can be the full-time guy. They're going to bring in somebody. They'll probably draft a rookie. Now, the thing people need to keep in mind with these rookies is anybody can walk into an organization in the third or fourth round as a running back and completely destroy the value or cloudy up the value of the running back that you are excited about. So someone like Mike Davis, somebody like Miles Sanders, somebody like, man, even Cam Akers. Like I know we're going to talk a little Cam Akers in here. I've got a lot of pushback from people based on my last video. I don't know if I said this on the live stream or if this is in another video. I believe it's the mock draft video too. But I got a lot of hate. Smitty, what's with the hate for Cam Akers, bro? Like, dial it back. Like, explain to me why you don't like Cam Akers. I think it's pretty evident why I worry about Cam Akers. Am I saying I hate him? No. Am I saying he can't be a running back one? He absolutely could be a running back one. But there's a certain point where a guy climbs up into the risky area, and let's put Cam Akers on screen because that's who we're talking about. Cam Akers' value for 2021, and throw that puppy right on screen. There we go. Can Cam Akers earn running back one value? Absolutely. Like you just said, he could. But are the Rams capable of completely jacking this up? 100%. Could they turn toward Henderson, even though people think no way they already would have done that? Yes, they could, because Henderson did have a good season at one point, a little part of the season, a stint, as long as Akers is good stint. Now, Akers leaves with a bunch of momentum. That's a great thing. Momentum is important. But with the Rams, what we've learned is momentum doesn't really 100% lock you into being a productive, long-term, trustworthy fantasy football option. And we haven't seen them commit to somebody or prove me wrong on that since Todd Gurley failed and they misused him. They lied about everything the entire way. Oh, we forgot to use the man in the Super Bowl. That's funny. There he is over on the bench. You know, we from the beginning of that, coming out of the Super Bowl, that specific Super Bowl, he was number 1, number 2 overall in fantasy football. Todd Gurley people were not that scared off. They were kind of wondering, okay, why didn't he play in the Super Bowl? Is he hurt? If he's hurt, that's okay. You know, he'll still be the number 1 or number 2 overall pick. We're drafting Barkley coming off ACL surgery in the top 4 right now, which I think is fine. I like Barkley a lot, and we can talk about Barkley next. But, you know, injury doesn't concern me. The type of injury concerns me. The surrounding red flags concern me. So with Todd Gurley, it was very evident something was being held back. They were being, they were misleading everybody when it came to this situation. So I started beating the drum, boom, boom, constantly. In February, March, April, May, I broke the iPad. I did the 10,000, no Todd Gurley, no Todd Gurley, no Todd Gurley, no Todd Gurley, 10,000 times on my show in a row. No Todd Gurley, no Todd Gurley, no Todd Gurley. I don't remember if I rung the bell or not, but I did that for Todd Gurley awareness. Okay. I just kind of launched that channel too. And so there was a lot to be worried about. Since that point in time, they've drafted Darrell Henderson high. They didn't use him. They drafted Akers high. They didn't use him until the end of the year. Akers looked good, but was I wrong in saying avoid Akers in 2020? Not really, because a lot of people drafted him where you would draft like an incoming rookie right now, like let's say Javonte Williams lands in a pretty decent spot. You had Akers going in some cases that high walking into 2020, and a lot of people couldn't use him until the very end when it was too late. So, you know, he failed a lot of people last year, or the Rams failed. Now, he looked good at the end of the season. No question about it. He looks like a running back 1. No question about it. He looks like he has power and speed and things that, you know, I probably didn't even give him enough credit talent-wise coming into the NFL because of my concern for that situation itself. All of the red flags surrounding that situation. But then the injury history, and he was banged up. There is some reason to worry about injury history, especially if you couple it with his style of play, because his style of play is very, 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 very aggressive to his own body. His style of play is one of which he has an innate instinct to lower his head and just jam his spine into you until he runs you over. And that worked really well at the college level with smaller guys. Now, he did really well at the end of the year, breaking through little rushing lanes and just completely showing his speed and elusiveness, and didn't have to do that as much, but he was a little bit of an injury like worry, and I think that carries over. So the problem for me is that you have a little bit of an injury concern. You have a big, big trust concern and lack of trust with that coaching staff and how they use their running backs, how they trust and unleash them, how they understand what we understand. So for a moment, when you think, oh, Smitty, you just hate Akers. You absolutely hate Akers, Smitty. Before we get to that point, I think it's really, really important to know that I'm saying I like him. I'm saying I like him way more than I did now that he's in the NFL. Marshawn Lynch was a good running back in college. He looked like a very nice prospect in college, but he became a much better player once he was in the NFL. That happens. That doesn't make me a hypocrite. That doesn't make me a backtracker. It makes me a non-biased person who's able to adjust and adapt and give you guys the proper fantasy football advice at the right time and ensure I'm going with the flow of how things really are, not digging my heels in and saying, well, I didn't like Akers before. I can't look stupid, so I'm going to dig my heels in and keep going. That's not what I'm about. I can change directions like that. I can be against that player, but understand, hey, there's value now. Very, very against Joe Mixon for how long? 2 years in a row. Don't draft Joe Mixon. No Joe Mixon. No Joe Mixon. No Joe Mixon. 2 years in a row. He busted. This year, he looks kind of good in the third round in at least one league, but he may not fall there because of Bernard. You know, old man Bernard, who looks like Antonio Brown's father, left. And now everybody's like, oh, Joe Mixon. And so he might climb back into the second round where I'm going to be back to, no Joe Mixon. Not as a second drafted player. You can fool somebody once, you can fool somebody twice, but you damn well better not be fooled 3 times on my watch, because I'm sitting here from the rooftop screaming at you constantly, no Joe Mixon, over and over and over, year after year. Same thing with Miles Sanders. Who is the biggest Miles Sanders doubter at number 14 overall ADP? This man right here. And I like Miles Sanders in 2021 now that Peterson's gone, the running back by committee monster. Now that Peterson's gone, the guy doesn't know what players to push out there on the field. It's crazy. Live on the Fantasy Football Show. I'm posting this on Clubhouse right now. Okay, so we're live on Clubhouse too. Let visitors in. Okay, so we're here live on Clubhouse right now. Clubhouse, you're live on the Fantasy Football Show live, so you're just listening. I'm sorry I'm not engaging with you, but I want to give the people a chance to listen to the show live. It's a 3-hour show, so buckle up. Buckle up. It's Raj. It's Raj. What's up, Raj? Raj, dial in later. Okay, I might later in the show, Raj, you might dial in, but I'm going to have the fantasy footballers on. So I'm not sure if we'll answer. Maybe I'll patch you in if you do call during that time. What I'm talking about right now is what was I talking about? Akers. So I love Akers. I love Akers for what he is. But what he's not, to me, is a very safe top 12 pick. He's not great at number 10 to me. There's not a lot of protected in value at number 10. Number 11. I like Akers in the right situation. I like Miles Sanders, like I said, in the right situation. And I was very, very against Miles Sanders all year last year because he was going at number freaking 14 overall. You're not protected at all. There's no risk baked into that pie whatsoever. And the same thing with Joe Mixon over and over. God, here we go again. If he climbs into the second round, I'm out. I do like him. At third round value. There's a very different value when you talk about third round, third drafted player value and second drafted player value, especially when you're talking about a player that has a whole bunch of risk. So circling back to Akers, I like him as a low end running back 1. I worry a lot about Henderson. You could cuff the two together to try and mitigate some of that workload risk, but who's to say you're going to be able to know who's going to start each week? It's going to be Akers out of the gate. Let me repeat, Akers will be the running back 1 out of the gate, and there's going to be so much hate on this video from the start. I could just see it in the comments. Smitty, you're wrong about this. I'm not wrong because I'm telling you, Akers is a running back 1. Okay, so let me take away your ammunition right now. He's a running back 1. But is he worth paying for at 8 overall value when there's a whole bunch of risk attached to his name, from injury risk to decision making by that coaching staff? Will he be starting 16 games for you and earning that number 8 overall value? Or is it more about me saying, hey, I like Akers, but I like a lot of these other players around 8 overall better than Akers, 9 overall, 10 overall. I see Akers and Swift going back to back by some of the same people over and over, and it's freaking crazy. It's, Swift especially. Like, talk about a player that's overdrafted. Devonta Swift, I think, has taken a little bit of a tumble. His ADP was super high, but since they traded away Stafford, his ADP plummeted back into like the top of the third round. Third round player value. Third drafted player value. Like I said with Mixon, like I said with Miles Sanders, I'm kind of okay with that for Swift. I'd probably rank him a little lower than the average bear. Still, I'm going to have him like low third round, but I like him as a third drafted player way more than I like him as a second drafted player. And there are some people out there that are still doing this Akers Swift stack, because I feel like if you like Akers, you like Swift. If you like the kind of undervalued lead dog like Akers, he's very easy to get behind if you're one of those people that love the underdog, because he's the underdog of the running back ones. No question about it. There are a lot of people that love him. He's got a lot of supporters, but he is the underdog running back one. And there's a personality type in fantasy football. You can see it now. It's the running back guy that typically loves Akers. It's the running back guy that loves freaking drafting Swift. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's your draft style. I'm not saying the running back is a bad choice to make on draft day. I think it can lead to some holes that you can't overcome at wide receiver and other positions. But I do feel like if you have a tendency to draft Akers at 9 overall, you have the same tendency to draft Swift at number 14 or 13 or 12 overall. And I think you're doubling down on two players that have a bunch of upside, sure, but they have so much risk. And I'm not about that when it comes to my number 1 overall pick. And there are so many good players at number 8 that let me play a game here with you. So if you're talking about Tyreek Hill, you're talking about Devonta Adams, you're talking about Jonathan Taylor. I'm talking so much that I'm already got a dry throat, cotton mouth. You're talking about Jonathan Taylor. You're talking about Devonta Adams probably being gone, but I've seen him go as the second drafted player according to expert consensus rankings lately, which is weird. But Devonta Adams, Tyreek Hill, like, these guys are a tad safer, in my opinion, than going Akers at 10. Akers running back 1 overall, 2020, says Jonathan. Jonathan, that's bold, bro. I like bold, and trust your gut even over me. Trust your gut. Jonathan, if your gut, I'll tell anybody this. If your gut tells you something, don't listen to anybody. Use advice like mine, advice like anybody's, to help push you or nudge you over the fence when you're on the fence balancing between two different things. Do not let somebody like me talk you out of something you truly believe in, because what's going to happen, you're going to resent me. You're going to get upset at yourself. You're going to say, I told you so. I knew it. But guess what? If you don't do it, you didn't know it. Okay? So if you know it, Jonathan, do it. But I'm certainly not on board with you, but I still respect you, and you're my boy. But Jonathan, no way do I feel he can be the top running back in fantasy football because of the Rams. The Rams alone. Now, you got Stafford. That's good. They're going to pass a lot. But will they run the same? Will they run the same amount? And again, with Akers, can he unlearn some of those tendencies he has that we didn't get a chance to really see shine through because he didn't get that long of a run? He didn't start for half of a year or a full season to see how he runs. He broke free, had a lot of big runs, looked really good, I admit. But this is at the end of the year after he was misused all year long. If Akers is that good, and I do believe he probably is that good, assuming he could stay healthy, which is one of my concerns. If he is that good, why did the Rams wait so long to use him? He did have some nicks and injuries and stuff, but why do the Rams do that? Because the Rams don't know what the hell they're doing with their running backs. They haven't since the Super Bowl where Todd Gurley took a dive. And I don't trust it. They misused Darrell Henderson. I'll go to my grave that Darrell Henderson could have been a monster, and we saw flashes of it last year, which was nice to see. It was nice to feel like, okay, I wasn't totally crazy to love Darrell Henderson the way that I did, but they completely misused the running backs. And what I said earlier in the show, I still feel there's a possibility here. They could draft a running back. Not a big name running back, but in today's NFL draft situations where running backs fall so late, any team could draft a Chuba Hubbard or a Carter or a Jefferson or whoever that could cloudy up the situation. And we saw Henderson be taken pretty high, not get used in year one. Now, that should tell you that if they draft a rookie, they probably won't push out the starter. But the bottom line is we don't know what the hell they're going to do. It was Henderson. They've invested highly in him. They had to want to roll with him, right? No. Then it was Akers. They drafted Akers higher than they drafted Henderson. He had to be the guy. And people drafted him as a very low-end running back to high-end flex and didn't get to use him until they were out of the playoffs, and it was all a moot point anyway. So it's going to be a controversial topic the entire offseason, I think, on my channel and inside my rankings. But am I really disrespecting Akers that much when I say he's a third-round pick to me? Am I really saying at 3.2, I feel 3.1, I love him? I start to love him there. There's a flip, and I'm sorry, but the flip is a stark flip. Now, granted, if you've got the last pick in the second round, you have the first pick in the third round. It doesn't matter if you draft him at 2.12 or 3.01. My point being, if he is your third drafted player, or in an auction you have him as one of your top three that are all kind of equal, you will put yourself in a position that if Akers fails, you probably still get a lot of your money back and investment, and you don't lose your league. If you put everything you have in the Rams coaching staff with your number one overall pick, you're making a very big, risky decision and play and bet on that Rams staff. And I'm not willing to do that. I would be willing to do that on Akers, maybe, but not on the Rams coaching staff. I'm out when it comes to that kind of value. Who is the next guy we're going to talk about? Swift. I guess we'll go to Swift next. I already touched on it briefly, but DeAndre Swift is a talented running back. You know who else was talented that everyone's going to pretend wasn't now? We're going to say, oh, he's garbage. Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson, injuries, misuse, horrible situation. Detroit never, ever, ever producing good running back value consistently, at least, since Barry Sanders. They almost did with Reggie Bush. It didn't work. The Detroit Lions are cursed. Why people are feeling good about Swift right now when they got rid of their quarterback, sent Stafford over to the Rams. They've got a new quarterback in Goff that's very underwhelming to begin with. But now you give... Let's paint this picture, because you have a lot of people saying Goff's not that bad. Goff could do okay, right, Smitty? Okay? Goff will be okay. He'll be fine. Okay, so let's paint this picture then. You got a guy in Goff that's going over to a place in Detroit that this guy that's going to, take the world on now in Stafford. A lot of people love Stafford. He finally gets a chance. Stafford's going to blow up. He couldn't do it over there. He couldn't stay consistent over there. It's crazy that anybody feels like Swift's value is going to improve with the other pieces like Galladay gone, Stafford gone. Now they're going to run the ball more. He'll get a lot of opportunity. Opportunity in volume doesn't always lead to production. It can lead to injury, especially if you're getting no first downs. You're inefficient. And having Goff there, having no Galladay, they may draft a rookie wide receiver, but will that receiver do extremely well right out of the gate? If it's Devonta Smith, I'll be a little bit down and depressed on it, and I'll have to really do an inward look at my Devonta Smith rankings for 2021. I think long-term he would still figure out a way to become what he's supposed to become. I think good wide receivers do that, especially Calvin Johnson did that in Detroit, ironically. DeAndre Hopkins did it for a while until he got his man. But I think DeAndre Swift is setting a lot of people up for disappointment if you're expecting him to be anything but a third drafted player. If you're going to draft him at 3.4, I'm okay with that. I'm not mad at that. I don't think you're making a mistake. I may not draft him there because of by default there are better players that I like. Not that I hate Swift. Not that I think Swift is garbage at that range. I just think there are still a couple people falling into that third round that I just love more. Would I rather have Najee Harris in a redraft or ETN than DeAndre Swift? I would. And if that's not your cup of tea, then it's not your cup of tea. And it's fine. We can all have different opinions. Hit the thumbs up on your way in. And send the link out to people. Let me put this in the chat. And tell them to let me know you sent them. And I will put their name and your name on the screen and shout you out for bringing in the peeps. Bringing them in. So spread that link around. Swift. I just don't see it. Second round. What's he doing at 14, 15 overall in mock drafts? I don't understand. And so many times, it's the same player or owner that drafted Akers at 11 or 10. They draft Swift at 13 or 14. It's just a personality type. They love the underdog running back, and these are the two that they want together, paired together. They're always together. It's crazy. So to recap, I don't hate Swift. I don't hate Akers. I think there's value for any player once they cross that line in the sand. It's avoid, flips over to a good value. And Swift's flip point, his line in the sand where he becomes risk, on down to a good value is third drafted player territory. The same place for Miles Sanders, the same place for Joe Mixon, the same place for Akers. And Akers you could put right at the top of the third round. I'm fine with that. Just as long as he's in that third drafted player value range. I don't care if it's your 2.12 or whatever. I'm just saying he needs to look like your third drafted player when you look at your roster, or you will have a pretty light looking team, especially if things go a little badly and they're not as good as you think for Akers. Now, again, if Akers starts going crazy and the team starts feeding him, the team feels very confident in him, they show a lot of support for him, they don't do this whole, well, no, we're going to mix our running backs around. Like I could just see news breaking tomorrow. Yeah, we're going to use multiple running backs. We love Darrell Henderson. We're going to, we could look to even draft a back. Like if anybody thinks the Rams aren't capable of that, you're biasly in favor of your dynasty player named Cam Akers. If you don't think that's a possibility that the Rams could screw this up, then you own Akers. Congratulations, Akers owner. You have a good player, a lot of upside, but you are defending him at all costs without even like breaking down the situation. I like Akers. I like him. I repeat, I like him. And if he starts getting fed out the gate, I like him a lot. And he still has some injury concern for me, but I like him. And so I will be fine with drafting him at a certain point. Could that value climb from 3.1 up? Certainly could. Like I told you, I'm not going to biasly dig my heels in on a point and not make adapt to what's going on. I'm very, very cognizant of player value changes and risk going away. So whatever the case may be, I'm not worried about freaking Cam Akers playing well when he's being fed. It's about the Rams. It's also about the injuries. Once he's on the field, I love him. Once he's getting fed, I love him. If he's healthy, I love him. But there are factors at play that make it concerning. I took Gibson, CEH, and James Robinson in the startup. Third, early fourth, lots of trades down over Swift and Akers. Trade downs Swift and Akers. I took Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and James Robinson in a startup I like that, bro. I think let's talk about James Robinson for a second, because I think that's a really good topic. I gotta stand up again. James Robinson, J-Rob, is extremely undervalued. What are people doing undervaluing this guy? J-Rob, in Dynasty, J-Rob has a freaking third round value. J-Rob's being drafted in the place I'm recommending you draft, Akers, and J-Rob's going there in Dynasty. I was shocked the first time I heard that he had a third round cemented in ADP in Dynasty. I was like, how the hell is that possible from a guy that pretty much every indication is that he's going to have the most opportunity to be a top 10 running back, and he's floating around 3.1, 3.4, 3.3, 3. Like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Let me put J-Rob on screen here. I love James Robinson's value. James Robinson. I mean, that's fantastic value, guys. There's little risk in James Robinson as a third drafted player in Dynasty. And you're going to have a lot of people say, well, Smitty, hold on. But Smitty, James Robinson's an unrestricted free agent. Sorry, Nicholas, I'm going to get rid of your mug. It's just in the way, bro. You're just in the way. I need to get you out of the way, bro. James Robinson, Smitty, is an unrestricted free agent, and unrestricted free agents don't fit the player profile, the model, Smitty. They don't fit the model. They don't. And on top of that, they don't get a second contract. I hear that over and over. It's all about second contracts and models, and coaches aren't going to believe in a guy that was an unrestricted free agent. Urban Meyer's coming over and is going to want his own guy. Urban Meyer doesn't know that he has one of the most talented up-and-coming running backs that no one saw coming from a macro level. Yeah, he's just going to walk in and go, let me see here. James Robinson was an unrestricted what's wrong with him? Something has to be wrong with him, because what I saw last year doesn't match what everybody thought he would bring to the table, so therefore he's got to suck. I'm going to put him on the bench. We're going to bring someone else in. And you ask a coach, are you bringing anybody else in? Is James Robinson going to get 100% of the carries? Coach, we're going to bring someone in to spell him. And then what do people do in the news world? Cut it up. We're going to bring someone in. That's what you hear. No, it's Urban. They're going to give him a breather. They're going to not make James Robinson hit a stacked box all year like he did last year. One of the most efficient runners, in my opinion, based on what he was given, because the dude averaged like 4. What was it? 4. Somebody pull up the here. I'll pull up the stats. James Robinson stats right here. James Robinson stats 2020. Here we go. James Robinson. I'm going to screenshot this bad boy and put it on screen for you, because his stats were out of control. Out of freaking control. For given the situation this man dealt with. Out of freaking control. And I've seen some stats where people are like, he was inefficient here, or he's inefficient here when he was facing 8-man fronts, or whatever. The dude, okay, let's just back up and talk about his stats. Whatever stat someone's trying to manipulate and say, oh, but if you put him in a 7.5-man box in the third quarter when they're out of hot dogs and they're screaming, and the 4 people in the crowd are screaming, and there's no one in the crowd. If it's an empty stadium versus a non-empty stadium, the dude was inefficient. The dude had 4.5 yards per carry. 4.5 yards per carry. 7 TDs on the ground, 3 TDs through the air, 10 total. Look, I'm using both hands, Mom. 10 total TDs. 1070 on the ground, 344 receiving, and 49 receptions. And the most important stat, how many games did he play? James, was it 14? James Robinson. We should have brought this stat up because I would have had that in the freaking call-up box. 14. Correct. I'm correct. 14 games. 14 games. He did this in 14 games. And you're worried? And nonetheless, you're worried at third-round value? Are you kidding me? Why is James Robinson at third-round value in Dynasty? Because he doesn't fit the profile. He doesn't fit. How old is this man? Let's take a look at the stats. 22. If he's 22 and not 21 and a half, the year he does this, there's no chance for James Robinson to get a second contract if the wind's blowing south, they're out of hot dogs during a home game, and the guy hasn't, he's an unrestricted free agent. Can't work out mathematically according to the profile. I don't give a crap about a player profile. You know what I care about? My eyes. And my eyes tell me James Robinson has wiggle. James Robinson proved it. If you want stats to back up the eye test, 4.5 yards per carry in a situation where there were no other weapons. DJ Chark, who I believe super undervalued heading into 2021, as is Laviska Shenault. One of these guys, I don't know which one, to be completely honest. Let me just admit that right now. I don't really know which one's going to explode. But I do know that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a top 5 quarterback and fantasy quarterback within 1 to 2 calendar years. Trevor Lawrence will be elite. Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence, you know what elite quarterbacks typically do? Guys that are the next Peyton Manning. And you can at me all you want, say, Smitty, he hasn't thrown a pass yet. How can you have Trevor Lawrence as a freaking top 5 quarterback when he hasn't thrown a single pass in the NFL? Because I can. Because I have my own show. And when you have your own show, you can do what you want. And whether people return after you blow it, that's on you. But Trevor Lawrence, I'm pretty good at quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are kind of my wheelhouse. Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, all landed on my bold prediction board the year or a year and a half prior. Josh Allen, probably my biggest prediction since Pat Mahomes. Quarterbacks I do really well with. And I can be hit and miss on some of the breakout running backs because of usage and injury. And that is what it is. With quarterbacks, it's a pretty darn good accuracy for breakout predictions. And Josh Allen was on the bold predictions 2 years in a row. And I predicted that he'd be a top 4 quarterback coming into his breakout year the year prior when it was all running. And it was like, this guy's not going to be accurate at all. Josh Allen's the number 2 fantasy football quarterback across the board. Redraft, dynasty, you name it, he's number 2. You could argue Herbert if you want, and I wouldn't be mad at you. Especially if Herbert gets an offensive weapon in this NFL draft class like Devonta Smith. Imagine. If Herbert gets Devonta Smith, I'm going to have a dilemma. I'm going to pickle. Guys, because I'm going to be like Herbert, Allen, Herbert. I don't know what to think. I love both. And in a super flex, can you imagine owning both? Back on point, James Robinson. My boy, James Robinson. The unrestricted free agent, James freaking Robinson. But Smitty, unrestricted free agents don't do well and get second year deals, do they? Priest Holmes. Arian Foster. And if we're going to cross position and be like, let's doubt some people, what about Kurt Warner bagging groceries at 27 years old? Let's take a moment and give Kurt Warner the respect he deserves. If you were too young and you were sharding in your pants or in diapers when Kurt Warner was dropping fantasy football loads for a living, first of all, be ashamed of yourself. You weren't born earlier. You should be completely ashamed of yourself. Number 2, Kurt Warner was arguably, in my opinion, the most fun fantasy football quarterback to ever play. You could argue Manning. I get it. People are going to have their preferences. But Kurt Warner was exciting. Kurt Warner was phenomenal. He was 26, 27. I forget how old he was when he started the game, but 27 years old. This man's bagging groceries, and there's nothing wrong with working at a grocery store bagging groceries. Please don't take it that way. But this man's bagging groceries and still not giving up. How many people would have gave up and said, you know what? It's not going to happen. Whether I believe in myself or not, it's not going to happen. And he kept trying. And at 27 years old, the profile, Smitty, no quarterback can do that. Can you imagine what people would have said if you came out and said, Kurt Warner, this guy that got brought in, not to start. Trent Green went down in the preseason before week 1. Trent Green went down. Trent Green was the starter. They brought Kurt Warner in to be a blue 32. Where's my football? Here we go. Blue 32. Backup quarterback. Here's Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner, how does he hold the ball like that? Kurt Warner, backup quarterback, finally gets his shot to back up Trent Green. Little does Trent Green know, little does anybody know, that this will be one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Coming in at 27 years old, gonna still have a long career. And he didn't fit a profile. So don't give me James Robinson doesn't fit a profile. Or James Robinson isn't gonna get a second contract. Or Urban Meyer's not gonna believe in James Robinson. Because James Robinson was an unrestricted free agent. And he can't do it. There's just no way. There's too much doubt. Let me tell you something about the psychology of fantasy football. And I know a little bit about psychology, even though my degree fell down the other day. It fell down, okay? I had it Velcroed under the door because I didn't want to drill into the door. But I do have a degree in psychology. I bring psychology to fantasy football because it's a passion of mine. I love psychology. It's why I made it my undergrad degree. I quickly found out you can't use psychology when I was 21 years old unless you get a master's. So that sucked. I knew that halfway going through, but I wasn't changing. Psychology, I loved it. And I still love it. I love the psychology, the conformity, the recency bias that we all face, the negotiation, the trade negotiation, how to negotiate a trade. Hey, Bill, how about you trade me Cam Akers? Let's use Cam Akers in a positive light because I know a lot of you Cam Akers people are pissed off at me right now. So let's talk about him positively. Hey, Bill, give me Cam Akers. Now Cam Akers won't be traded to you. Congratulations. You wore your cards, your entire 5 cards playing poker on your chest. You taped them to your chest and you just walked up and said, "What's up, bro? You want to give me Cam Akers?" That's what you just did. There's an art to trade negotiation. I'm going to have a whole master class on it. But point is, psychology is fire. You can use psychology to your advantage. And psychology, I just saw the fire emojis by Daniel and it made me say fire. Psychology's everywhere. We're manipulated. Psychology is the study of how people affect people. Sociology is awesome too. How a group of people affect a person or a group of people. So it's fantastic studying all of this stuff. Sociology, psychology, implementing it into your fantasy football. And you know what people don't do enough, and what I'm going to bring to this freaking industry, which I should have done more of it up until now, but I didn't do video until about 2 years ago. So shame on me. But I'm going to make up for it. Is how to improve upon being a good fantasy football owner. What do people do? And I got to remember where I'm headed with this. It was James Robinson being doubted psychology. Remind me if I forget, that's where I got to go because I'm sidetracking the hell off of the ramp right here to go down another complete different freeway. But my point being that what I'm bringing to the table is how to improve upon being a better fantasy football owner. So let's use Daniel in here and Paul. Daniel and Paul in here. Okay, no offense, guys. I'm gonna generalize here. You probably don't think much about improving upon your fantasy football skills, do you, Daniel or Paul? You just go through the motions, bros. You get up, you put your pants on, you walk to the kitchen, get your cup of coffee, you go to work, you look at your trade offers, you say no, you say yes. You don't don't fret too much on missing on Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year like we all did, like I did, because of situation. You don't really look at it too much. You might say, oh, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to draft a rookie like that again. Especially like, let's say Javonte Williams lands in Miami. I'm not just going to put him at number 1 and draft him again. That's your learning process. No offense, but that's everybody. They attack it without even any kind of improvement, learning. Treat fantasy football like a learning experience. Improve at your weaknesses. If your weaknesses are X, Y, and Z, and you just kind of assume, okay, well, that didn't work out, and you don't try and improve upon them, trading or evaluating a risky situation, that might be your risk there to your drafting, to your management style. If you don't know your weaknesses and you don't actually try and solve them and make them strengths, you won't ever be a better fantasy owner. You're going to be relying upon your good fantasy draft skills because you follow the channel, you have your own innate instincts. I don't have people in here that don't know what they're doing typically. You guys are a very, very knowledgeable group of fantasy football followers. Like, we mock draft, you guys know your shit. But what everybody does is they stop there. They don't practice their weaknesses. They don't mock draft based on their weaknesses. You mock draft the same freaking way over and over. People give me a hard time when they come in a mock draft of mine and I'm trying out the 0 running back approach or the 0 quarterback approach in a super flex from the 12 spot. And I even telegraph it. I tell people I'm drafting 0 wide receiver. Or no, I'm drafting wide receiver in a super flex from the 12 spot. Just letting you know, I'm wearing it on my sleeve. And then 2 or 3 people, maybe they just joined the chat. Maybe they don't listen very well. Maybe it's both. But they say, that was a mistake. Rookie mistake, Smitty. Take a lap. Why'd you not take a quarterback? Because I'm trying it out. I'm working on myself. Everybody needs to work on themselves. Your ideology must be contradict that of the majority. Stay ahead of the game. Yes. I think I understand what you're saying. In all my years of schooling, I think what you're saying is, you're right, Smitty. So I will be working on that, how to better your fantasy football skills, how to identify your weaknesses, how to improve upon those things once you identify them. So if you identify, hey, I make bad trades, guess what? I'm going to send you down a learning track about making bad trades, how to avoid making bad trades. One technique, just to give you an idea, would be writing things down. I know that sounds very archaic and dumb. We don't write anymore, do we? But if you get a piece of paper out and you make bad trades, write down both your teams side by side visually. Don't just imagine it. Look at it side by side and ask yourself, what team looks more dangerous? What team looks riskier? And you'd be surprised at how many bad trades you avoid making just by doing an equal comparison written down side by side. Things like that I can help you improve upon. Also, hey, Smitty, should I trade Swift for AJ Brown? Or if you want to use position for position, I don't know. We'll just use Swift for AJ Brown. Oftentimes, the simplest way to figure out whether you should be doing a trade or you're doing a trade that people are going to make fun of, after, and you're like, oh, you're worried about, oh God, the league's going to ridicule me. Where do you draft them? Even if it's week 4, if you were in a draft starting right now, right there, week 4, where would you draft those players? And if AJ Brown is here and Swift is here, then the trade's fine. It comes down to how you view each player in your predictions, or if you're relying upon me, I'll tell you what I think, but I think you need to make your own decisions. But it comes down to that. So many times I get very knowledgeable people that come to me and say, Smitty, should I make this trade for this trade? Or even if it's a 2 for 2, that's where it gets a little more cloudy. And I say, hey, Steven, where would you rank this player that you're giving away? And they say, well, 18. Where do you rank the player if you're drafting today that you're receiving? Well, 24. Why are you making the trade? If you plot out everything and then analyze it, it works a lot better than just blindly going into it, trying to do it all in your head. And visually, you need to break it down. Those are just some small things that I help people with to try and not make horrible trades. And it's simple. Those are the most simple things that you can deploy to try and not make a horrible trade. Back on track, driving back on the ramp, get back on the freeway. Here we go. James Robinson. The psychology is where I was going. The psychology of James Robinson and where you draft this man. The psychology behind it. So the reason you doubt him, if you were a James Robinson doubter, let me enlighten you. Kick your feet back, sit on the couch. Let me tell you why you have daddy issues with James Robinson. James Robinson, you maybe didn't find. Somebody else picked him up. You didn't see him coming. Worse, you saw him kind of coming. You ignored it. You doubted him. And you missed out on him. And Bill from accounting scooped him up. Maybe even got lucky. He had the number 1 waiver pick, whatever. Scooped him up. Started him all year. The dude went crazy. And you're resentful in here. You're not aware of it. It's subconscious. But you're resentful that you didn't see James Robinson coming. Too many times. And Austin, I see your super chat. I'm sorry, brother. Let me put it up on screen here. And then I'm going to read it. Too many times people let that influence how they value a player. They let the fact that they didn't see him coming, it makes you root for or against that player. So you're like quietly in your mind, you don't even know why you're rooting against James Robinson to validate the fact you missed him. Because if James Robinson fails, then you weren't that wrong, were you? You didn't miss the boat, did you? Same thing with Lamar Jackson, the year Lamar Jackson broke out in 2019. Everyone and their mother loved hating on him because it made them feel better about missing him. And if he missed again and they doubled down on it, then it was like, okay, I wasn't wrong. He had a fluke year. All you guys talking about how Lamar is going to be the next best quarterback were actually wrong. I don't feel stupid anymore. There's so much psychology behind everything that we do. If you can understand it, you can then manipulate it. And I don't want to say that manipulating people or sports is necessarily the way I like to term it. It's more like you understand the game. You understand the moving parts. You can step around this, step around that, and weave through like a bunch of walkers coming at you in The Walking Dead. You know the rules. You know how to get through. You know the tricks of the trade. You're not cheating, but you're manipulating the environment because you're astute and you're trying to absorb everything you can and use everything to your advantage. And one thing you can use to people's advantage is that they doubted James Robinson and internally they're mad about it. They're mad about it. Let people doubt him again. Let him fall to the 3rd round. I'm probably ruining that opportunity a little bit because now everyone's going to mock draft him just a tiny bit more. And then maybe he gains momentum and climbs into the 2nd round in Dynasty. In redraft, you will see him go oftentimes in the 15 to 22 range, depending on the league you're drafting with. They may love him. They may not. All it takes is one person to draft James Robinson at 12. And a lot of times, a guy like James Robinson will go 12 or 13 in redraft because the one guy, it's kind of like the guy who has the mullet, and mullets went out of style, and then mullets came back in style, and he still got it, though, and he doesn't even know that it went out of style, and all of a sudden, the dude's just wearing the style, and he didn't even mean to. He stumbled upon it. So, the guy that owns James Robinson at 12 or 13 knew he did well last year, but he didn't catch up with the wrong trend of doubting him because he's an unrestricted free agent, doubting him because they think Urban Meyer is just going to toss him aside and want his own guy, like everyone else is being influenced by this fake vibe out there. And the guy with the mullet just thinks he's doing great still. Like, just came out of week 17. I think I'll draft James Robinson at number 14 and doesn't even mean to be crafty and draft him early. The mullet guy is always going to be an X factor, a wild man. Austin, appreciate the super chat. Jags were also 32nd ranked in rushing attempts, even with Robinson still beasting out, is basically what Austin's saying. I got Robinson on waivers before week 1. Kyle, is it a dynasty league, and do you still own him? because I'll tell you right now, Kyle, that was a great move. Something that I was pushing out there heading into the week 1 waivers is this dude needs to be picked up. But even myself didn't necessarily feel like he was somebody we talked about here and there, like Robinson's got a shot. But even myself heading into week 1 wasn't like I was freaking all on board. This is the James Robinson train. But I, over the years, have learned how to not let that impact me and say, oh, well, if I didn't see him coming, he can't be good. And then I hold James Robinson down, subconsciously because I wasn't a part of his rise. I didn't believe in him. That could be a weakness you may or may not have that you work through. Clubhouse, I'm gonna, hey EA, what's going on? I'm gonna end this for right now because I do have to use my phone. But definitely get on over to thefantasyfootballshow.com and join us. We're live over there. I'm going to send an invite over to my boy, Rob. I don't know if Rob is dialing in soon or not, but Rob will be joining us, and we can talk about, a few of these topics. But if you guys have any controversial running back rankings or topics that you want me to address with Rob, he runs the Fantasy Football Show, or Fantasy Football State of Mind, on Instagram. He's a really good dude, and he runs an amazing page. And he's got like close to 50,000 followers for a reason, because he's fire. He's my boy, and I'm going to send him a link right now. And I don't know when he's going to come on, but we'll certainly invite him on the moment he is available. So I'll send that to him right now. So good topics so far. James Robinson, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift. If you're just joining us, make sure you rewatch the first hour. And what are we in? We're hour 2. The first hour and 5 minutes were all about James Robinson and Swift and Akers and Kurt Warner. So Mike Davis, man, didn't we start off with Mike Davis? I feel like that was the first name that we were supposed to hit on, and didn't even go there. I just completely went in a different direction. So let's change this to Mike Davis, and let's talk Mike Davis. I kind of touched on it, but I think it didn't go too far. So Mike Davis's fantasy value for 2021. What do you guys think about Mike Davis? I'd love to hear in the chat. James Conner will be running back 1 in AZ, says Blackbeard. That's a good controversial topic. Redraft but won my year with his help. Good job. Yeah, that'd be awesome if you had him in Dynasty, bro. There's always one guy in every league that makes bad trades. There is. And that's a controversial topic. There's somebody on Instagram that I was supposed to help, and I'm still going to. There was a horrible trade that was made, and he asked me, should it be vetoed? And I said, look, your trade should be vetoed based on your rules. If you don't have a process in place where you veto bad trades, then it is a tall order to go and play, Roger Goodell in your league and say, I don't like this trade for you, I'm not doing it. Or this helps this guy too much, I'm not doing it. In my opinion, if you play in a league, everybody's a big boy or girl, they pay their entry fee, they should be able to make the trades that they want. And if you have trouble making trades or you want help, heysmitty.com. Just a quick plug to my text platform. If you want to text me on demand, heysmitty.com. Even while I'm on the show, I might even reply to some of your texts if you're sending them to me, because it's a on-demand service, essentially, heysmitty.com. I've helped a lot of people so far this offseason build some amazing teams. They've done, I give the credit to them. They're making the moves and coming up with some of the ideas. But the guidance helps you, to have somebody you can bounce stuff off of. And in dire need, you say, Smitty, call me, and I'll call you. That's all part of heysmitty.com. And we'll talk on the phone too if it's a dilemma. But James Conner, we'll talk about James Conner right after Mike Davis. Mike Davis proved, let me pull up his stats, proved to be an animal in replacing Christian McCaffrey. Now, he is no spring chicken, and it's important to know that he is 28 years old. His birthday is in February, so he just turned 28. But that is a old man in the NFL at the running back position, unfortunately. And that means he's like on his last hurrah. It doesn't even matter so much that he hasn't, like, you know, been utilized a ton in early part of his career. There's a certain age value, and now you're probably saying, Smitty, now you're doing the profiling, but this is just a common accepted thing that when you are a certain age, your body breaks down at the running back position. So I'm not saying he can't have 1 or 2 years, but if you're in a dynasty league and the man's 28 years old, and we're talking about Mike Davis, don't expect him to have like a stellar, long-lasting 4 to 5 year reign as a running back 2 or a high-end running back 2. This is a guy that your legs deteriorate. He still had college work. He still goes through every practice. He still had mileage. Just because you don't have game mileage, you still have mileage. Your body breaks down differently as you get older. And there's just a certain amount of time where you're more susceptible to injury because you're 28, 29 years old. So there is actual science and rhyme and reason to it. It's not just speculation. 28 years old is not good. Doesn't matter if you have no mileage. It's not good for dynasty value. But 15 games, he hit a couple walls. You could call them rookie walls, even though he technically, was, old and not necessarily a drafted rookie. But 642 rushing yards, 3.9 yards per carry was not great, but he was fed a ton. He had 6 touchdowns on the ground. Most importantly, he got a lot of that Christian McCaffrey volume, 59 receptions for 373 and 2 touchdowns. So he ended up with 8 TDs and, roughly 1,000 yards. Not a bad year at all for a guy that, McCaffrey played a couple games. It wasn't like he started all 15 games. But the bottom line and concern I have for Mike Davis, if you own him, you almost can't get rid of him at value that's acceptable. So you almost have to kind of roll with, riding him until the wheels fall off, which, given your investment, your upfront cost, that's fine. He's actually a really good bet to not trade away and just kind of bank on it. And if he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. I think if you want to trade him away before we get to his value or how much I really like him, you want to do it in a 2-for-1. And I've always told you guys that, and that's another part of my trading masterclass stuff that I'm going to roll out, is that whenever you're in a bind with one player and you don't know what to do with that player, how to trade that player away, the number one way to dilute any risk or to build a player back up that has some risk or concern is to do a 2-for-1. You're giving Mike Davis and somebody for one slightly better running back or one slightly better receiver when you equate that receiver to the value of Mike Davis or whatever. So you want to identify your first step is to go through your entire league rosters and say, what player is better than Mike Davis? Or if you even go bigger route, like let's say you have Julio Jones and you want to get rid of Julio Jones and you have Mike Davis, use Mike Davis as a throw-in to improve one monster starting spot on your team. That's probably the best way to do it. Trading for a player slightly above Mike Davis or worrying about Mike Davis's value at all in the trade will probably leave you dead in the water and no one's going to make a trade. If you want to trade Mike Davis, supersize your fries by using Mike Davis as a little extra ketchup or sauce or whatever. So you take Julio Jones and you go to your rosters and you say, what wide receiver would I rather have than Julio? Ridley? Of course, A.J. Brown. Of course, Jefferson. Of course, CeeDee Lamb. You just start poking around at every one of these wide receivers. Ones you for sure like more than Julio Jones. And then you add Mike Davis. You say, I'll give you Mike Davis and Julio for Lamb. I'll give you Mike Davis and Julio for Jefferson. I'll give you Mike Davis and Julio for Ridley. You do it to like 15 of the guys you for sure would love to have. All it takes is one person. All it takes is Bob or Bill from accounting sitting there at their cubicle at the right moment in time where they read the right thing about Julio, or they read the wrong thing about Ridley, or they read something about Mike Davis, hyped them up. You don't know. If you don't offer enough trade offers, you can't stumble upon good luck when it comes to trading and getting somebody to accept a trade that maybe they wouldn't have accepted the next day. How many times have you accepted a trade you regret 10 minutes later? You're like, I shouldn't have did that trade. And maybe if you were asked on a different day, different point in time, different part of your day, maybe you weren't even on lunch when it got asked, you would have said no. So if you're not taking advantage of attempts, you're not going to land a big trade. If you make one offer and you're like, Smitty, I tried to trade Mike Davis. I made 2 offers last week. You're probably not going to stumble upon an accidental vibe somebody has in favor of the trade. So offer in masses, offer a ton of trade offers, and you might land something that you normally wouldn't have. That's the key to trading. Trading in masses, getting somebody to accept something they might not always accept because you want to win the trade. Why is somebody going to accept the trade that you're winning? Because for whatever reason, they see it as even, or you tricked them into thinking there's more upside on my side. I do need a running back. I do need a wide receiver back, so this makes sense. I just want to trade. Okay, I'll do it. How many times do you trade because you want to trade? So you might catch Bill from accounting just wanting to trade today, and you're the only person there. Offer masses, do 2-for-1s. That's how you can get rid of Mike Davis. Now, Mike Davis, if you look at his game log, he had a lot of good games, and then he kind of hit a wall, and he had a lot of bad games. He had good TD volume in spurts. The receptions were there some games and not others. You know, looking at like early part of the year, week 2, week 3, week 4, he really did better at the beginning part of the year, especially with the receiving game. He had 8 receptions in week. Here, let me put his game log up, and you can kind of see where he did really well and where he tailed off, because he really did tail off at the end of the year. And if you were to take his beginning part of the season and extrapolate it out, he would have had a much crazier, better year. So if you look at week 2. Week 1, he didn't do anything because McCaffrey played that game. Week 2, he didn't really do anything on the ground. So we had 1 yard, 1 attempt, yet we're still counting that week as a big high volume week because he had 8 receptions for 74 yards. So when you look at it, it's a little unfair. And then you look at week 9 and week 10, I believe that may have been when McCaffrey came back. This is a pretty good season when you take out week 1, week 2, week 9, week 10, and I believe we have a justification to take those out because McCaffrey played in those games, I believe. I don't know when McCaffrey came back. I know he came back in week 10, 9, somewhere around there. Correct me if anybody knows that. But so essentially you're talking about like 13 games, 12 games that really Mike Davis did his damage on. Now his yards per carry was still 3.9. That's not good. But if you look at the earlier part of the year, there were games where he had 5 yards a carry, 5.3 in week 4, 5.6 in week 5. He had later on had 4.6 in week 10, 4.6 in week 14. But he did have a lot of those games where it's like, 3 yards per carry, 1.7 yards per, there's just some bad yards per carry averages going on in there. But look at his receiving totals from week 2 down to week 5. 8 targets, 8 receptions, 9 targets, 8 receptions, 6 targets, 5 receptions. And then in week 5, 10 targets, 9 receptions. He didn't ever return to that form after kind of hitting a little bit of a wall there and breaking down a little bit. And then in week 7 and week 8 and week 9 and week 10, it was like a big, drop because partially McCaffrey was trying to come back and the carries just weren't there. So tough to really evaluate and say one way or the other that Mike Davis won't do well as a starter. I think the main thing we got to ask ourselves is, where are you drafting him? Are you drafting him as like a high-end flex? Then it's fantastic. He has a lot of upside there. If you're drafting him as a high-end running back too, unless you've built a very crazy way at wide receivers, like where you've drafted wide receiver, and then George Kittle, and you haven't even taken a running back yet, then I could see you going with Clyde and Mike Davis as your starters because you went Adams and DK and Kittle with your first 3 picks. Then all of a sudden, Mike Davis becomes one of the craftiest running back 2s in fantasy football if you're taking him as like a 5th or 6th drafted player to play that running back 2 role. So it depends how you build. If you want to go and bank on Mike Davis, I recommend you use him in a running back 2 role where you're stacking at other positions for the first 3 or 4 rounds, and you come back around and you pair Mike Davis with an Alexander Madison and Tony Pollard and a bunch of guys like that, A.J. Dillon, so that your running back 2 has Mike Davis there, but you've got all these other amazing cuffs and players that if got into their team's lineup could be a top 10 running back. That's kind of how I do that risky running back 2, where I'm stacking wide receiver. So I go Adams, I go DK, maybe even I go Jefferson, Adams, DK, Jefferson, Adams, DK, and Lamb. I would do that. I don't care. I'll go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Watch me. Hold my beer. And then I'll get Clyde and maybe Mike Davis is my weak running back 2. Like, I give a crap because my wide receivers are stacked. That's how Dad did it. That's how I do it. And, bro, let me tell you, I'm okay with the wide receiver in that situation. And especially in Dynasty, I love buying wide receiver, because you're not really drafting them in an order, but you were able to get Jefferson, Ridley, and Lamb at much lower cost than the Devonta Adams and Tyreek Hills. And now you have a whole bunch of freaking value to spend on running backs. If you don't like Clyde, Jeffrey, you don't have to take Clyde. It is a choice that you can make. Insert different player and use process, bro. Use process. If you doubt Clyde, doubt him. But I do believe in Clyde at the right value. Do I believe in Clyde at first round value? No, you can't buy him there. You shouldn't buy him there. This is the same debate we had that's in the intro video right here.
This is the Fantasy Football Show.
Dalvin Cook, he was a top 5 running back, and he dropped into 22 to 25 overall, and everybody kept saying he's too risky. He's too risky. He's too risky to be a top 5 running back. He could get hurt. I don't know that I buy Dalvin Cook as a top 5 running back heading into, 2018, 2019, whatever year that was. It's all blur. I agree when you say they misused him. Yeah, Jeffrey, and if you are a Clyde doubter, dude, trust your gut. But I think if you do believe the Chiefs will misuse him again, that's your argument, and you could be right. So I'm not crapping on anybody's stance that doubts Clyde. I personally like him. I think he got a bad shake. Definitely got a bad shake on the goal line work. I don't believe Andy Reid for a second has ruled him out as an every down, even goal line back, just because everyone else thinks they can make the determination. They know what Andy Reid's thinking. They think that Andy Reid doesn't watch the film and go, God, we kind of put Clyde in a position to fail 4 times in a row at the goal line on that one series, and everybody else looks at it like that rules him out. Clyde can be used. He could be one of the better goal line draw play players or players you throw to in goal line situations in the NFL. You have to use Clyde right at the goal line. Clyde was completely swarmed every time he touched the football at the goal line. It was not his fault. Clyde cannot be taken down by one player in open space. Clyde could get taken down when he sits there and looks at 5 guys coming at him, and then, yeah, he gets nailed and crushed. But, it's preference. I forget where I was even going, but I like Davis. I like him as a late running back 2 in a crazy, weird wide receiver build. I think I was going with the auction, saying that if you are in an auction and you were to buy Jefferson, Lamb, and Ridley, you're spending a much lower value on those guys. So it's not like you're buying 3 Devonta Adams and you're out of money. You can literally buy those 3 wide receivers and still get pretty decent running backs. So it's a pretty awesome way to go. Let's see if Rob's coming on or not. We got Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers coming on here in about I'd say 25 minutes. So I'm going to put this graphic up real quick and show you that. But Jason Moore is coming on soon. Get ready for that. Hey man, I got 20-30 minutes. Jump on now. Okay. Dial in, bro. And we'll briefly ask him his opinion on these running backs. James Conner, maybe we'll kick it off with James Conner because we haven't talked about that yet. That might be a good topic of discussion with Rob from Fantasy Football State of Mind. Conner, Blackbeard says James Conner will be the running back 1 in Arizona. I don't know that I share that viewpoint. I think quite honestly, they're both going to hurt each other, Chase Edmonds and James Conner. But could the Cardinals did want to lean on one running back. And even when, and I'll save this for Rob if he's dialing up right now, but even when Drake got hurt and had an opportunity to sit out a while, and the Cardinals could have said, hey, we trust Chase Edmonds, like, Drake, get healthy. They didn't let him. They put him out there kind of banged up still, lingering, and shoved him out onto the field and used the hell out of him. Granted, Drake didn't have a good year overall, grand scheme of things, very inefficient, not good PPR work, ended up finishing very, very low for all running backs, but was high in yards and TDs for a big part of the year. It was a very complex player to break down statistically because he felt like he was doing very well in two categories, but completely crapping the bed overall in fantasy, and it was kind of confusing when you owned him because you're like, he feels productive, he's getting in the end zone, or he's not getting enough yards, he's getting like 40 yards and a TD, a salvage game, he keeps getting this TD to salvage his game, but he didn't do well. But Drake was misused, and you got to ask yourself, was it Drake's fault? A lot of people are going to blame it on Drake, and I love Drake walking into 2020. Let's not pretend I didn't put a lot of content out there on Drake. I did, and I take responsibility for not evaluating the situation properly. So we need to be careful with Arizona in general, whether it's Connor, whether it's Edmonds, whether it's a rookie that they bring in, because Arizona wasn't using the running back properly enough in 2020. We have a little bit of concern that they will use the running back a significant amount all over the field and not phase the running back out some games, or part of their craft is phased out and they only use them between the tackles with no PPR work because Kyler's rolling out because he can't see over the line. And so Kyler's got to get outside the pocket, and that ruins the opportunity to throw to the running back. Oftentimes, there's a lot of reasons for Drake missing out on a lot of PPR work, designed plays that did not involve throwing the football to Drake. And if they bring in a running back, I think what you want them to do, and this is not going to be popular, especially with James Conner being brought in, and Blackbeard's going to disagree with me, and maybe Blackbeard leaves the chat. They would be smart to draft Najee Harris. If he's there and they're on the clock, the Cardinals are staring at Najee Harris. I don't care if you brought in James Conner on his $1.4 million deal. That's like, that's nothing. Like, they don't have to worry about James Conner and his contract detouring them from going running back. They don't. There's nothing wrong with having three really good running backs you trust on your roster on a team where you want it to develop Kyler Murray. I can tell you, Blackbeard, and I don't know if you're from Arizona or not, Blackbeard, if you're the same individual I'm thinking of or if somebody else, but I'm in Arizona, and I can tell you the number one priority for the Arizona Cardinals is protecting the man named Kyler Murray. And if drafting Najee Harris protects him, which I firmly 100% believe would be the best move for the Arizona Cardinals, then they should do it, and they need to do it. I don't know that they will. I think the James Conner signing certainly lowers the probability of them going Najee Harris, but if you will remember, this is the same coaching staff that took Kyler Murray with a first-round pick the year after Josh Rosen was invested in that first round, top 10 area. 1 year, this new coaching staff comes in, they put their brass balls of steel on the table, and they say, I don't care what the regime did before us. I don't care what we have invested in Josh Rosen. I don't even care if we keep Josh Rosen before, and ruin his trade value by drafting Kyler Murray, because then everybody knows we're starting. You're from Twitter, bro. I got you. I remember you were maybe from Arizona. I don't care at all about what other people think they should do or what the trend is. Like, I'm telling you my honest opinion, and my honest opinion, my assessment of this offense and what it needs. Yes, they do need defensive help, but they also need other things. And keeping Kyler Murray healthy, Najee Harris would help do that more than any other piece that we could bring in. But I believe it will be, yes, Jeffrey, probably Farley, Surtain, someone like that, probably most likely going to the Cardinals since the Connor signing. But I don't think the Connor signing will completely derail their game plan if they did want to target Najee Harris, and if Najee Harris is really high on their draft board. I can tell you with certainty that everybody's got a certain place that they would draft Najee Harris if he fell to a certain point. Where's Arizona's line? Does Arizona say he's a good football player, like this is the best player on the board? Teams think a lot like that more than we believe. Pitts would be amazing, Blackbeard, but we'd have to trade up to get Kyle Pitts. So I don't know if that's going to be possible. But Kyle Pitts would be a fantastic land. I think the best place for Kyle Pitts, though, Blackbeard, without question, without hesitation, without equivocation, would be the Chargers. Give Justin Herbert, a Jamar Chase, a Devonta Smith, maybe even a Waddle, but definitely a Kyle Pitts, and that man vaults into my top. I don't know how I dropped Josh Allen out, but I put Herbert right next to Josh Allen, and Kyle Pitts would be a beast. Not that he won't be from day one. He probably will be wherever he goes, but if he goes to New England or like Detroit, I don't like it. There are a couple spots I don't love for Pitts to develop very quickly. I think he still could. Rob's calling in now. What's up, my man?
Yo, what's going on, Smitty? How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm gonna have to cut it short too because I got Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers coming on next, so I might have to run right before you're about done. But we're talking about the Cardinals. We're talking about James Conner. Let me put James Conner on the screen here. What is your take on James Conner and the potential he has in Arizona? And what I was kind of saying was that, and a lot of people would disagree with me on this all over the place, I still feel like the Cardinals are not like out on the Najee Harris possibility. Like signing James Conner certainly reduces the odds of them going going Najee Harris. But James Conner, isn't he signed like a $1.4 million deal. His signing and bringing him on does nothing for them to say like, oh, we can't do that now, or now we went a different direction. Like, it doesn't work like that. Not when you're paying somebody a $1.43 million or whatever it is. And teams, I was saying before you came on, teams think differently than we do. We oftentimes think, oh, they won't do this because they have this. Teams will take oftentimes the best player on their board, and when they don't have running back on lock, and protecting Kyler Murray is their absolute number one priority. I'm in Arizona. I know this to be the case. The focal point is keeping Kyler healthy, having him mature and take that next step, because there's accuracy issues. There's issues with him having to always throw outside the pocket. Najee Harris would help keep defenses a little bit more honest in shadowing him and allow Kyler Murray more of an opportunity to navigate the spaces on the field that he's good at navigating in, throwing on the run to DeAndre Hopkins. There's just a lot of reason that Najee Harris, from that perspective, makes all the sense in the world. Tell me your take on Conner. Tell me your take on Chase Edmonds and the probability, even though it's lower, of the Cardinals looking at Harris if he's there.
Yeah, I mean, Chase Edmonds had about a 2.5 week fantasy hype run before it was completely shattered, right? And it's actually funny that you mentioned the Fantasy Footballers, because when we broke the news, their Instagram, I don't know who runs it, I think it might be Mike, commented a skull emoji on the post, because I feel like he probably thinks that the running back position is a bit of a wasteland in Arizona too. Yeah. But with all that being said, the position has a lot of value, man. I mean, Kenyon Drake had an up and down season, but if you would believe that he actually led the NFL in goal to go opportunities last year. He had double-digit touchdowns. The position is a value, especially when you have a player like Kyler Murray. I think, as you mentioned, James Conner is more of a complementary play. I think he makes the team better, but by no means is he somebody that they're going to rely on for 16 games, because James Conner has never finished a full 16-game schedule. So I think the idea of Harris in the first round, I think it would be a great option for Arizona. And if that happens, however, the backfield is just way too messy for us to really love Harris as a value going into the next season.
I think I would like Harris there. And you make great points about, Drake doing well, and it was confusing because Drake was like in the top 6 in the league in rushing yards for a string of like up until like, I think it was like week 10 or something. And he was in the top, I think 6 for rushing touchdowns. He even jumped into the top 4 at some point deep into the year. And it was like, the guy's like at the bottom 20 something in running back stats from a fantasy perspective. And it was one of those things where efficiency was really bad. The TDs kept salvaging his weeks. And I was big on Kenyon Drake. Like, I had content all over the place. So that is one of my bigger misses in 2020.
Right.
And so I'm a little skeptical of their willingness to utilize the running back properly, no matter who it is, because the way Kyler plays, a lot of times the running back isn't looked at as an option like it probably should be because he's rolling out a lot. It's hard to throw to the running back when you're on the run. And he throws outside the pocket so much because there's talk about him not seeing over the line. He's comfortable outside the pocket. He needs to be more efficient. So if a running back does go in there, it needs to be somebody that can run the ball like 20 times a game. And if the Cardinals are moving the ball down the field and they're getting first downs and they're effective, they can still have the same kind of offense they have and just have more production on the ground. So out of all the running backs that we're talking about, like ETN I love, but they don't throw enough. I don't know that I want him there because ETN's the best receiving back in this draft class. You want him somewhere where he could catch footballs. Right. Najee Harris could potentially be, I think, the answer from a fantasy perspective and also for the Cardinals to make that next step and become a top 10, top 8 team in the league, which they could do, especially with the improvements on defense. Like, this team is going to be freaking phenomenal if they can put it all together. I love Arizona's odds this year. But Chase Edmonds, when Drake went down, like I said before you came on, they had every opportunity in the world in Arizona, that coaching staff, to sit Drake and get him fully healthy, but he came back hurt. Right. He came back hampered, and they didn't say, no, we got Edmonds, get healthy, we need you later. They just shoved him out there, and that says two things. One, they didn't care about Drake, but two, it also said they didn't care about Edmonds because they would have leaned on him at that point had they needed him and they wanted a healthy running back in there. And so for me, I don't think they trust Edmonds, even though they say they did, and look what happened. They brought in Connor. Connor's learning a new system. Connor's very injury prone. Right. Connor isn't somebody you're going to rely on, right? So if they don't bring in another running back, which I 100% think they will, even if it's late in the draft, like a Chuba Hubbard, Jefferson, a Carter, a Hill, somebody like that, Williams, there's a lot of running backs that they could bring in. And I'm not saying Javonte Williams, Puka or whatever his name is, little guy. But they could bring in a bunch of those names later, and then it cloudies it up, and maybe that's the player to grab weight, and then maybe the rookie, climbs up. Because like Chuba Hubbard there, he probably have very little. It'd be very, very low entry point cost to get him because people would be scared to death of that situation. And I don't see value in Connor. I don't see value in Edmonds at their ADPs, which are looking pretty high to me.
Well, I think their ADPs are both going to fall, right? And let's just play out a scenario where they don't address the running back position. You go into the year with James Conner, Chase Edmonds as their starters. Chase Edmonds' value comes specifically as a PPR option. He caught 53 passes last year, which was 7th among running backs, right? He was only 1 reception behind Austin Eckler, 1 reception behind David Montgomery, 400 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. So I think they use James Conner as literally a replacement of what they had with Kenyon Drake. So I think that's kind of the 1-2 duo, kind of what we saw a lot last year, which for fantasy owners, it's kind of a lot of unpredictability, and a player can go off 1 week, and it's just something that you really are not going to want to trust on your RB2. But I wouldn't mind taking a gamble on either of those guys as a bench player to eventually fill in as kind of a rotation flex play.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Another topic that we're talking about, Mike Davis. What do you think about Mike Davis heading into 2021? Phenomenal year overall, considering he only played, 14 game, or I'm sorry, it was 15 games, but there were 2 games in the middle of the year that McCaffrey tried to come back. Week 1, he wasn't used at all. Week 2, he got 1 carry. He did have good receptions and total and yardage totals, but you look at it, it's really like 12 or 13 games that this guy got the full go. He only averaged 3.9 yards per carry, but he had 10 total touchdowns, about 1,000 total yards. Going in at 28 years old, I believe. Not great for Dynasty that he's that old, but, low mileage. What do you think about him from a Dynasty perspective? And what do you think about him from a redraft 2021 only perspective?
Dynasty, the value is almost worthless, right? I don't feel a running back at age 28 on a 1-year deal is going to be much of anything. But for redraft, it's actually really interesting, man. I think he's one of those veteran running backs that are in a good position where without Todd Gurley, right? I forget who was their secondary running back that was there.
Where?
In Atlanta.
Ito Smith. They had a couple different guys. I'm blanking on. Ito Smith's gone. Hill.
There you go.
Hill's gone.
With that being said, I feel like Mike Davis is going to have the opportunity to just be the guy, right? And he was one of the best pass catching running backs in the NFL last year. I do feel that, dude, in that offense, and I don't know, it's just they get Kyle Pitts. Like, this could be a really, really good offense. And if you're the starting running back on a top 5 offense, that usually leads to a pretty decent fantasy season. So give me Mike Davis in the 7th, 8th round.
Will they run him enough, though? Because everyone thought Todd Gurley was going to be this, beast in Atlanta. Everybody, keeps kind of counting on Atlanta to be a good landing spot for running backs. But, I don't think anybody's really looking at it. Are they really going to produce an elite running back? Or I like him. I was telling everybody before you came on that my favorite place to draft him, or favorite position or viewpoint to draft him, would be in a league where you go wide receiver, and then Kittle or something, and you haven't drafted a running back yet, and then you take whether it's Monty or Clyde with Mike Davis, and then all of a sudden you got yourself a really crafty gamble that if it doesn't work out, you have other guys you could throw in there.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, man. No, Todd Gurley did not do well, but from a fantasy perspective, for a good portion of last year, he was very serviceable. He was that guy that would just get you 12 to 15 fantasy points because he would find the goal line on occasion. But he did carry the ball 195 times, man. Yeah. If you tell me that Mike Davis is going to get 195 attempts, I'm down.
Especially if he's a PPR, he proved he can fill the shoes a little bit of the McCaffrey workload. So if he had a string of games where it was 8, 9, 10 receptions, that is, a running back to get 10 receptions in one single game is, you don't walk or fall into that. You are a good receiving back. So if he does get Kamara type usage, or McCaffrey ratio, not the same production, but Kamara type workload where it's 190 carries, 175 carries even, but then gets 55 to 60 receptions, then you have yourself a top 10 running back. So I'm in agreement with you. I think it's a crafty running back too, but you have to be deploying an interesting strategy, in my opinion, or you're really putting yourself in a position to, if you're making him your running back 2 and you don't have a stacked wide receiver core, or you didn't do something crazy where you got a tight end, or that is a very risky play unless it's a very deep play, by design.
It is. I feel like you and I are one of some of the only people that end up gambling in that way.
Yeah.
Where you're I'm just gonna go with this, right? I'm gonna be top heavy at the receiver position. I'm gonna guarantee that workload. I'm gonna take my shots at these running backs and hope that one hits. So it's a plan that can work.
It's like my 3-headed monster approach that failed miserably last year because Barkley went down, McCaffrey went down. But I always find that, with that team, I had Watson, who I traded for Josh Allen to get rid of that whole risk, and I gave up a future first rounder. But I had Watson, I had Barkley, McCaffrey, Kamara, and Hollywood Brown, and that was it. I had Conley, John Brown, garbage wide receivers, and people that don't like taking risks like we do, or the challenge of building a team like that and finding the James Robinson at wide receiver, finding these up and coming guys. It's funny the comments I get on that, Smitty, your wide receivers are bad. No crap. What do you expect my wide receivers to look like when I had Kamara, Barkley, and McCaffrey coming into 2020 when those guys were 1, 2, and 3 overall? They were literally 1, 2, and 3 overall, or at least 1, 2, and 4. And this year is a little different. They're still very highly ranked. One I would say Kamara could be 2. And then Barkley's like in the 5 range. Barkley's climbed a lot heading into 2021, like mid off-season drafts, but early off-season drafts like January, February, when nobody but us are mock drafting anyway.
Right.
He was going like at 9, 10, and everyone was scared to death of him. And last year when he went down, what was it, week 2? Week 2 he went down?
Yeah.
When he went down, I had so many people, shameless plug, which you can't see. Whoops. No one's sitting there. HeySmitty.com, shameless plug. But at my service, HeySmitty.com, I had a ton of people that would be like, hey, do I get rid of Barkley for, and I mean, insert like 3rd round type talent. I'm like, you need to like totally back away for a whole year and understand that you could trade him, but trade him at the right value if you want to compete this year. But time heals everything. And this guy was nowhere near anybody's top 10 in Dynasty right after the injury, but they slowly climbed back up, and now he's right back in the top 5 overall in a lot of early mock drafts. And that's the nature of injuries, man. You got to like take a step back before you overreact when a guy goes down, because he looks good. Everything I'm hearing, the dude is, firing on all cylinders. He's doing some amazing workouts where he's like literally lunging with his leg up on a bench and vaulting up as high as he can and landing on that leg. Like, the one thing about Barkley is his thigh strength and surrounding knee muscle strength is so tight that joint is going to be more sound than anybody else's joint that's ever recovered from ACL surgery at the NFL level. You mark my words, he's going to be trusting that leg more than most people.
Well, I mean, does he have a Adrian Peterson type of recovery season where we see a 2,000-yard rushing season after an ACL?
I think we could. Whether he's injury
he's the guy that's capable.
Yeah, whether he's injury prone in general to get hurt again, and keep in mind that coming off of ACL injuries, there is a compensation concern that causes like a hamstring injury. So a lot of times that'll happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had a hamstring issue and then he was like hampered for half of a year and it like was a disappointing comeback. That could happen.
Knock on wood. I don't want that.
But compensation usually happens with people that don't have what Adrian Peterson has and what Barkley has, which is insane muscle strength in the quads and surrounding like knee muscles that most people don't even have. Like, my knee's bony, man. I don't know about you, but if I knock on my knee, there's no muscle around the kneecap or anywhere. This dude's got wrapped muscle around his entire leg, and that keeps that joint tight. And the hesitation is when people feel it kind of like me. I had my surgery like near 20 years ago, and I still, when I cut on that leg, I don't trust it. It feels like I'm on top of a ladder and I'm gonna like fall out from underneath the ladder. It feels like my knee was severed in half, and they just set it back on top, and I'm just balancing on my leg. That's how my ACL feels.
Remember, soccer players, right? So they're cutting at a crazy rate during any game. So professional soccer players have these like bulked, yoked out legs with tons of muscles that prevents these sort of injuries from happening. So and I feel you, man. I'm not as worried from the Saquon injury as most people are, and I don't think people are, because everyone has him ranked inside their top 5 at this point.
Yeah, I don't think people are. You'll see occasional doubters on it, but for the most part, I do believe, everyone's pretty on board with him being back in the top 5 to 10 overall, and then you see some people rank him higher. But okay, one last. Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Every year we see a player fall off a cliff following a peak season, right? If you had to predict either Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry to be that guy that falls off, who is that guy for you?
I think pretty well known it's Henry for me. I think Nick Chubb and Henry are 2 of the biggest avoids of the big name running backs this year. But for Henry has 303 carries in 2019, about 400-ish for 2020 if you include the playoff games, which added another layer of being overworked. He was overworked all year, and then he goes into the playoffs and keeps going. That's 400 and something carries. That's insane for a running back on back-to-back, 303 the year prior. And then he has the 5th highest college football carry season in the history of college football. And then on top of that, he rushed for 2,000 yards, which the tail off is half or sometimes way less drop off from that 2,000-yard season to the next. Now, granted, there are only like 7 other running backs that have rushed for the 2,000 yards before, but if you look at every case, only Barry Sanders came close to repeating. And the argument people will have is, well, even like close to half of that production would still be a good, season for a running back. But you mix
it actually won't.
Well,
Smitty, it actually won't in his case because of the deficiency of the passing game.
Yeah.
He only caught 19 passes last year.
Yeah.
He did not finish as the RB1 in fantasy football, and he had 2,000 yards rushing and 17 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So if you have a 300 to 400 yard drop off from Derrick Henry this year, and maybe the touchdowns come down to 13, 14 range, he's a top 10 fantasy running back, but he's not a top 5.
He's on my bold predictions as an avoid. So we're not.
Dude, I'm kind of with you. And
it's going to get a lot of hate and stuff, but it feels right. And even if I'm wrong, if I'm a year early, it was still a safe concern, given that, I know he's different. I know he's built different. I know that the off-season footage of him working out kind of influences people. And they're like, oh, God,
right.
But how could you be on the verge of getting hurt? Look at this workout. He's got a big chain around his neck doing push-ups in midair, floating like a magician. But it doesn't matter. Your knees are different. Your knees are different cutting on the field. And this is a 245-pound, 6 foot, what is he, 6'3",
247,
240, 245, 295, whatever the hell he is. He's a linebacker running the football. And hitting the ground over and over is different for a Derrick Henry than it is for us.
I agree.
Falling on the ground is going to do more damage time over time on that frame than it would on our frame, because that's just a lot of weight hitting the ground. It's like LeBron James getting like hit to the ground every time. He looks like LeBron James out there running the football.
That's a good comp, man. It's a good comp.
And then another thing that worries me too is that it's not like he's dividing up, like you just said to your point, dividing up his workload like Kamara is to maybe inch out a couple more seasons or something. He's battling it out between the tackles, getting hit most. And I still have yet to do this. I wanted to deep dive on the tackles. I would be shocked if Derrick Henry wasn't one of the most hit below the waist running backs in the NFL. Because he's got to be. Like I still have yet to go into the stats, so I'll admit I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but he's got to be.
Well, dude, just logistically,
right? But on top of that, on top of the height and everything, like who wants to tackle him? From the waist up. So he's got it. So that right there, the odds of him getting like a knee injury from that alone, like add it all in, and it's like there's like 3 red flags, and I'm out once there's multiple red flags. And like Clyde, a guy I'm still high on Clyde. If I was worried about Clyde getting hurt or something, then Clyde would have multiple red flags. Clyde's got one huge red flag, which is usage, and he's got to overcome that. But his ADP, I think, offsets that a little bit. So no one's safe from me, labeling them as an avoid if there's multiple like concerns and red flags that are separate. So,
right.
Henry's got
I'm with him, man. Before I leave, I'll end this with one more thing. Alvin Kamara finishes the RB1 in fantasy football last year. He didn't crack 1,000 yards rushing. Just as a perspective, right? Derrick Henry finished 3rd, but Alvin Kamara didn't need 1,000 more rushing yards to finish number 1. His production came from the red zone and as a pass catcher. So it's a good conversation, man. But I appreciate you bringing me on, Smitty, and I'm excited to see your interview with Jason.
Yep. I appreciate you, man. Everybody go follow my boy Rob at Fantasy Football State of Mind. Right above his head. He's got 49,000, something like that.
45. Hopefully 49.
45,000 people can't be wrong. Go follow him on IG, and we'll see him next Tuesday. He's usually our Tuesday edition, so appreciate you coming on, man.
It's Thursday, but I appreciate you.
Thursday.
Appreciate you, Smitty.
Whatever. Tuesday and Thursday show.
Later, man.
Later, man. Our Thursday guest, I'm sorry. So next up will be Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers. He is coming on in just a few minutes here, and let's see. I want to put that up here. So, Jason Moore, the Fantasy Footballers. So he's coming on next. I'm going to put that right here, and I'm going to take a short break real quickly. Leave that right here for you, and let me put an overlay on here so that you guys know that he's coming up real quickly. Whoops. Actually, you know what? I'll hang here. We'll just I'm not going to take a break. I don't need a break. Who needs a break? Jason Moore's coming up. And if you guys have any questions for Jason Moore, please put it in the chat. And I will try and ask some of your questions for Jason when he comes on. So drop a question in the comments here. And so let me get him in the room. And send him a little. I'm gonna put some little tunes on while I do a little break. Don't go anywhere. Jason Moore's coming up right now. All right, what questions you want to ask Jason Moore? He's coming on right now. Let's talk rookie running backs with him. That will be topic number 1. And we'll get him in here. So, Jason Moore, inbound right now. We'll talk rookie running backs. We'll talk sleepers too with him. I think I'll ask him what players he thinks can have a real good shot at breaking out in 2020. Maybe we'll talk about a few guys that he's worried about too. I could ask him about Henry. We could ask him about Zeke Elliott. What are his thoughts on Zeke Elliott and these rookie running backs? I think that will be some of the good questions. Ask him if his favorite QB of all time is Phillip Rivers. Okay. I'll see if I can squeeze that in, bro. I don't know, Leonardo. You got something better than that? Phillip, you want to talk? You have Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers on, and your best questions about Phillip Rivers? Come on, bro. Is that his favorite quarterback? I don't know. Maybe it's his favorite quarterback. We'll talk rookies. We'll talk. I think one of the better topics would be, I think rookies, and then maybe. I want to talk Zeke Elliott with him and some of these players that could potentially be a risk heading into 2020. Maybe the receivers. We'll talk about the top 10 receivers, who he has as outliers. But here, share the link around. Let everybody know Jason Moore is coming on the show. So here we go. Share that link around. It's an inside joke to piss him off a bit. I got you, Leonardo. I'm just kidding with you, man. Do you think that the Chargers will pick up another running back? I think they could. I think that people ruling out the idea that the Chargers could go running back in the first round, I'm not saying it's likely, but it's not improbable. Like, think about Melvin Gordon and Eckler and how well Eckler did when he was in that PPR role. So I think it's a fantastic idea, to be honest with you. Jason Moore, ladies and gentlemen. Jason, we're live.
All
just
right.
so you know.
What's up?
What's up, man? Nice to finally get you on the show. I've had your counterparts on. They did a fantastic job. People loved them. and very, very glad to have you on the show right now. And I've got a room full of people that are excited to see you. So welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad you saved the best for last, but
Yes,
understandable.
Sir. Yes, sir. We are pretty close by each other. I believe if you yell outside right now, I might actually even be able to hear you.
Yeah, you're in the valley, right?
I am.
That's well, congratulations to both of us.
Yeah, we explain.
Fantasy sports finally being legalized here. Ridiculous.
Explain.
So, like a lot of states, Arizona is one where you can't play DFS, and that's been a long-standing battle. Stacey Stern, who's one of the leaders of the FSGA, she's local from here, and she's been spending years and years and years trying to get legislation passed. The Ballers have gone down to the local Senate here and been participants in years past to try to get legislation passed. But it finally happened. It was signed today by the governor. So not just legal fantasy sports betting, but full sports betting. Sports books will be open and legal in Arizona. I genuinely did not think that would. I mean, eventually, 5 years down the road, but I did not think we'd be here this quick, and that'll be in place for 2021 NFL.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've reached out to a couple of the daily fantasy sports sites, and the typical, I think, time frame to get it launched and working on their systems is about a 1 to 3 month time frame. So just to let people know, if you are in Arizona and you're wondering when can you actually participate, but man, we've been at a disadvantage because, it's hard to crank out content the same way on a DFS level, to the likes that we like to crank it out with the efficiency and accuracy, when you literally have these limitations that are sitting in front of you. So it's going to open the door to the Ballers, to my show. Opportunities are going to be through the roof, and I'm so excited, man, to be able to not just go fly a drone over with my cell phone over the border of a state and make a bet and fly it back. Like, I can actually place a DFS bet and cash it out in my own name.
Yeah, that is the thing I'm excited about. We talk hypothetically. We give the advice on certain things. Now it's like I want to do this. We've in years past with Underdog or previously Draft. I've played a million best balls, but I can only play in the ones that when I'm traveling, I entered the league, even if I don't start it for a while, when I was in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, goodness, the amount of best ball leagues I'm going to play is probably too many. I mean, I'm going to have to create some spreadsheets to track that stuff.
I'm thrilled. The best ball drafts, I'm going to get in those like crazy. I'm going to do a ton of mock drafts on those, or not mock drafts, best ball drafts, like all off season long. So as soon as this opens up, man, I'm going to be live all the time doing these. So yeah, congratulations to us, Arizona. It's long overdue. How many states are left not being able to bet on daily fantasy?
I don't know the exact number for daily fantasy. I know for the sports gaming, since that was ratified in the Constitution, 26. We are now the 26th state, but including Puerto Rico, that is now passed legislation.
That's awesome, man. I'm so pumped. So we have about 55 minutes left in the show. You can jump whenever you need to. You can stay as long as you want to. But one thing I was gonna touch on right out of the gate was some of the rookie rankings, running backs, wide receivers. Who is it possible in your mind that the Arizona Cardinals, we're both in Arizona, still might potentially throw a curveball and draft Najee Harris? He was someone I was pegging to get taken by the Cardinals. Not like 50% odds, but 30-40% chance that they want to give Kyler Murray a little bit more room to squeeze outside the pocket and throw on the run to Hopkins. Without having defenses completely keying on him. And I think Harris would be a wonderful addition for this offense. But do you think that signing a James Conner number 1 completely eliminates that? Or do you think if he's on the board, they still would take it and they're paying Conner, only 1.4 or whatever? And what's your take on the backfield in general?
Yeah, I don't think that signing James Conner completely rules out the Arizona Cardinals from being able to draft a running back, but it probably is the tiebreaker that will put us elsewhere. Like if Najee were to fall to us in the second round,
yeah,
I could see them saying, well, we did not expect this to happen. We can use our second rounder, but I don't anticipate that happening. And if, we're staring down Javonte in the second,
like that
versus, a cornerback that we need, if we didn't do that in the first round, I would expect us to rely on James Conner. As far as the outlook of the Cardinals backfield, a lot of people have been like super Chase Edmonds this whole offseason. He's going to be the guy. I've never, we're both in Arizona. I've never thought that he was going to be utilized in that fashion at all. So I've never viewed him as this huge top-end talent for drafts. However, the signing of James Conner is about as good as it gets for him, because if someone were to come in and now has, you can't be much better than a super affordable running back who played poorly last year and is plagued with injuries. So I do think, Chase Edmonds' ADP will drop, and he could be a real value in drafts now because of James Conner.
Yeah, I think they do ultimately go running back at some point, whether it's, Hubbard falls to him at a crazy value or like they go another direction. But I think there'll be a rookie in there at some point. But I agree with you. The odds go down tremendously that they would take Harris, and people were really against it anyway before that, saying that's not going to happen. But I just felt like if I'm in control of this offense and I'm trying to get Kyler Murray to that next level, I feel like that would be the difference maker for him. And defense is already much improved. Obviously we need a corner. I think Farley or Surtain, if they fell, would be good options for him in the first round anyway. But what's your take on Harris versus Etienne versus Harris, or are you a Javonte Williams believer? Because if he landed he's the guy I think out of all these players could go right to 1.1, even though he's like right now 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. Like, it's crazy that landing spot could do that for him. But what's your take on these three?
Yeah, those are the big three for me as well as for everyone. I think where myself, I know my co-host Mike are completely in sync on this, but not everybody is. I've seen Najee talked about as the third best back by people that I really respect, which is insane to me. Najee is so far and away the best prospect to my eyeballs, to what I look for. The knocks on Najee to me are he's older, which is legitimate, right? You get a year less of value if you're in a dynasty league. A lot of times people knock the 4-year college athletes, which is more fair in, at the wide receiver position, and also less fair if you're at Alabama, because you got to wait. I mean, it's an NFL factory. So if you want your turn as a superstar college player, you're going to have to wait for that to happen. So I don't knock him really for either of those things. I think he's a complete back. He has everything I look for on film. And my favorite trait, when I'm looking at like not just a weapon out of the backfield, but like a true, I want this guy to be dominant in fantasy football at the running back position, what I really want to see in college is the inability of defenders to tackle them. If it's one-on-one, if it's a one-on-one situation, okay, how many of those come up in a college game where it's like, okay, he got in space and now it's one-on-one. Will he break this tackle or will the defender get him? I don't ever remember seeing a solo guy just, he beat Najee on that play. It's like it's a village at the end of every play taking down Najee Harris. I love that in college. I think that's going to translate.
What's a better landing spot for running back, Miami or Pittsburgh in your mind?
I think it's Miami. The Pittsburgh offensive line obviously had problems last year. It seems like a team more on the way down versus a team on the way up. Those are two of my favorite landing spots, though. I think both are great ones, primarily because what the coaching staff has shown us is that they want a guy. They want someone who's going to be a 3-down back. They want someone who's going to be on the field all the time, someone that's really going to control the offense from the running back position, and I love that. I mean, that James Robinson last year was unfathomably great for fantasy, and primarily it was just because he got everything. He was 90% of the running back touches and snaps, and if that's happening from any team, we saw that for years, obviously, with Lev Bell, in Pittsburgh, and last year it didn't matter who it was. If it was itty-bitty Myles Gaskin, if that's the guy up, they're like, okay, you get all of the work. Oh, you're injured and we're going to Ahmed? Okay, you get all of the work. So if either of them spend high capital on a running back, they will be a 3-down workhorse.
What about the Jets? You like the Jets like third or fourth in line, or
Probably fourth in line. The Cardinals, I would still say if they were to take someone, there's a lot of opportunity on a good offense. The Jets, a lot of opportunity, not a great offense yet. And obviously you're going to have a rookie quarterback there, so that's not going to be super helpful.
see, I love that because I feel like everyone thinks I'm biased because I'm in Arizona, but I really do see the value in taking a running back. But the odds again are probably a lot lower than I want them to be. Okay, so let's play a little game here. So if the Jets are your fourth favorite landing spot, let's say Najee lands with the Jets, but ETN lands with the Dolphins. Who's your number one rookie running back?
ETN lands with the Dolphins and Najee with the Jets. That I don't want that to happen. I think I would foolishly put ETN first. And
I don't
I
think
guess
it's foolish.
that means, well, so here's kind of the, we can relate it to what we saw last year where Jonathan Taylor was the guy that we really loved in the pre-draft process. I was one of the lower people on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I wasn't as enamored with the college film as most of the industry was, but when he went to Kansas City and was the only running back drafted in the first, it was an easy and obvious, okay, he's first. I'm going to take him over Jonathan Taylor for sure. And then, as the season played out, you're like, man, Jonathan Taylor's really good. We knew he was good. The difference, though, is the Colts were still a good team, and I'm not sure that the Jets are going to be a great team. So I would probably still have the same logic I used last year and put ETN ahead in that situation.
I love ETN. I think he's the best pass catching back in this draft. And he needs to find a good place that will cater to that. And there's some risk, I think, to he feels like he has more upside in my opinion, but more risk. And I think Najee has that safe Marshawn Lynch type value, where he could be 6 to 12 overall in drafts for 4 years, 5 years, and that's good. That's really good. Whereas I think ETN has the potential in the right spot to be a little bit better, maybe not even that much better, but a little bit better. But he could also be a complete bust if he lands in the wrong environment. But yeah, it's these running backs are definitely the weakest part of this very, very good draft class. From Trevor Lawrence, who I think could have a top five future at the quarterback position. How do you feel about Lawrence? Do you think he's got eventual Peyton Manning-like ability? I know a lot of people hate to throw names around like that before you've seen a player take a snap, but I feel like I like to do that. I like to try and be predictive with things, and I try not to be reckless with it. But with Lawrence, I feel that this guy is truly special, and he's going to be in that top 5 or 6 conversation very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? Is to predict what's going to happen, and if you can predict a superstar before they're a superstar, great. Well, this one's easier to predict. I think a lot of people throw those names out. The best prospect since Andrew Luck. I don't think I've ever heard in this entire draft season that sentence not thrown out when talking about Trevor Lawrence, and it's true because it's very, very rare that the number one recruit out of high school is the number one recruit out of college. But when that happens, when the guy who was supposed to, I'm wearing a drafted to be great shirt. This guy was brought into college to be great and then was better than expectations, got better every single year, and now is the clear first pick in the draft. So I think he's going to be fantastic. A top 6 fantasy quarterback for 8, 9, 10 years. And so, yeah, that's exceptionally valuable for fantasy if you're in any kind of dynasty league.
Derrick Henry, do you have concerns about Derrick Henry coming off a 2,000-yard season, which typically of the other running backs that have ever accomplished that have literally seen their numbers get cut in half, or in some cases worse? Barry Sanders is the one that was closest to replicating coming off that 2,000-yard season. But when you have a guy like Henry who was at 303 carries in 2019, completely used, overworked in 2020, about 400 total carries if you include the playoffs, a lot of things coming together to make him, in my opinion, a pretty big risk at his ADP or the expectation level for him at least. Do you have concerns that this could be the year Henry falls off? Or if not, what running back do you have concerns about that others might not have that you feel kind of similar about?
Yeah, I mean, we just did our this week on the Fantasy Footballers. We had our top 20 rank, our early pre-draft rankings of existing veteran running backs. I was the lowest on Derrick Henry, but I was still at 6. I don't expect him to fall off. I don't expect his workload to go away. I don't expect his legs to be tired from a busy season. Derrick Henry has always been the outlier, right? There's so many statistical reasons why Henry shouldn't work, but he was the number 3 running back last year, and he was the number 3 running back the year prior. But again, I said I was lowest on him because there are concerns. Primarily, I always want a running back that can catch the ball because you can't be game scripted out. And secondarily, it's not just Derrick Henry and worries of like, okay, because he's had such a workload, his legs are going to collapse or he's going to get a season-ending injury. Those things can happen to literally anyone. It's almost irrelevant. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, the 1 and 2 last year, injured. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a running back, you can get injured. So take that out. The team, the offense is so shallow. If A.J. Brown gets injured, that's going to be bad news. You saw that even when they had Corey Davis last year. The first 3 weeks of the season, Derrick Henry wasn't this awesome guy when A.J. Brown wasn't there. He was the running back 14 week 1, wasn't in the top 24 running backs. I think he was running back 36 in week 2. So, yeah, there are concerns and you lost Arthur Smith. So there's concerns to me of the Tennessee Titans and the offense in general. But I'm not betting against Derrick Henry. It's just if I'm up at the top of a draft and I'm looking at other great options at running back, I will probably side with the other guys.
That's exactly how I feel. There's always what I call a line in the sand where a player goes from avoid, flips on over to a value grab. And I don't know where my line in the sand, to be honest, is with Henry. Probably a lot lower than I'm willing than he's ever going to fall to. So I feel like I'm most likely going to be a guy that doesn't own a single share of Derrick Henry in redraft. I own him in one dynasty league.
Let me ask you 2 names that came up on the show. I'm curious if you'd take Derrick Henry or these guys. Ezekiel Elliott.
Because he's in the same boat where it's like, I don't know how I feel about him, because anybody with his kind of mileage is not relevant anymore. Like, he has mileage that's crazy. And, a guy can look good. Like Derrick Henry's, it's so influential when you see chains hanging around his neck and he's doing push-ups and you're not thinking he can't get hurt. But knees, they break down. Terrell Davis had talked about it before when he saw Todd Gurley running. He said Todd Gurley's done. And it's because he knows. Terrell Davis said that there was a game he knew when his knees were just not going to cut it anymore. And it was in the middle of a game, and he still was doing pretty well the rest of the game, but he knew it was his last real solid game. Like, your knees can only take so much. A running back's different than any other position, and at some point, it happens quick. It happens so fast. And Zeke Elliott already looked inefficient at times, and you could play the whole, Tony Pollard comes in, change of pace, different defensive scheme, does well. Very explainable why a backup could look better than a starter at times. The offense fell apart. I think he's a value grab at 8, 9, 10 in maybe 1 or 2 leagues. But the fact that I'll tell you it'll only be 1 or 2 leagues, let's say if I'm doing 10 leagues, means that I'm concerned enough to not put all my eggs even close to in one basket with him. But
a lot of people concerned with Zeke this year. I am
Cuffing
not
Pollard, and then
projecting that, but I get it. You don't want to be left holding the bag.
I think if you have Pollard, it's pretty safe, and I think it's crafty to have Pollard without Zeke too. But I think if you have Pollard, it's safe enough to deploy in a redraft. But in a dynasty, I don't want any part of what the cost of entry is. I'd rather go after wide receivers or something because
right.
And that's the thing.
Trade a Zeke for a Chris Godwin if you could find someone in your league willing to do that.
I don't know about Godwin because I feel like he's a lot like Odell. Like, very talented, but will we ever?
You're ruining my piece over here. You're
yeah.
ruining it, Smitty. Back behind the production, desk over here is Brooks, who's listening in.
Don't do it.
He has Zeke, and I have offered Chris Godwin for Zeke, and he should be taking this deal. And you were supposed to back me up on that and say, yes, Brooks, trade Zeke for Godwin.
Well, no, let me put it this way.
Positive about Godwin, we're not talking about Godwin.
Let me put it this way. I feel they're very, very similar. Like, there's a lot of risk for both of them, and I don't know that we'll ever see what we need to see out of Godwin to be that, wide receiver one that we've been waiting for, like Odell. Odell is talented, but we'll never, we don't know if we're ever going to see him produce. But I will say that if you need a wide receiver or you need a running back, that would be a darn even swap with the same kind of risk, I think, on both sides. And Godwin's younger, so if you're in a dynasty, it does make a little more sense. But Zeke Elliott, I'm okay with in redraft for one or two leagues out of 10, as long as I have Pollard. And I think Dak, I love Lamb. Lamb's in my top 5. I think Lamb's a top 5 wide receiver in 2020. You don't pay that. I'm not recommending anybody pay that, but I absolutely think he's going to explode. And Zeke might have one more year squeaked out of top 5 to 6 running back production. Maybe. Could be. Possibly. Who's the other name?
The other name was Aaron Jones. I don't know how you feel on Aaron Jones versus Derrick Henry. If you're in a redraft league, which way you'd go there?
Probably, in a redraft league, I feel I would definitely draft Henry higher if push came to shove, but it might be like uncomfortable for me to actually do it because in my gut, I will want to go Aaron Jones. So I think I would trade down and take Aaron Jones, but get value out of that. Aaron Jones was such an interesting offseason move because here he is. He's going to free agency, right? 1 foot out the door. Everybody thinking he's gone. A.J. Dillon's the man. Everybody overdrafting A.J. Dillon, not thinking that coming back was a good possibility. And had he gone somewhere else, I would have been all out. I would have been completely out because here's a guy that has trouble staying healthy. He is touchdown dependent in a perfect environment that gives him what he needs in order to stay healthy, and he's going elsewhere. And the best thing for Jones was to return. We know what we're getting with him. We know the production we're getting with him. And Aaron Jones is top 5 running back upside. But the problem with him is the injury risk. I had him on my bold predictions, Jason, the year he broke out, and it was because he came in with his nutrition on point. He was completely ripped. He took the offseason seriously. So depending on how he looks and if he's taking care of himself, I don't know if you have any insider information for me on it, but that will determine about how high I go on him because he's so injury prone. And I would have been out because he would have got more work somewhere else trying to make up for not getting that touchdown production. But Chase Edmonds smells a lot like that situation because, here's Chase Edmonds, everybody thinking he's starting, boom, he's not, or maybe he's seeing competition. So I saw a lot of similarities between Edmonds and Dillon. What's your take on those two?
On Edmonds and Dillon?
No, on Aaron Jones and Henry.
I really like both of them this season. I would have Henry ahead. I still think, when you go back-to-back top 3 and you're dominating, and you're always dominating at the end of the season as well when it matters. If we're talking about redraft leagues, I'm not out on Derrick Henry. I actually think this year, when I'm looking comparatively to the last couple seasons, I think there's a little bit more depth at running back than in previous years. I'm looking at 13, 14, 15. I think Chris Carson's my running back 15. I like him this year. So it's rare. In the past, I've been like, man, if you don't get one of these 4 or 6 guys, it's over at the position. I don't feel that this year.
Do you like wide receiver at all? I'm doing a lot of mocks where from the 12 spot, I end up with, DK and Ridley, or Jefferson and DK. If it's dynasty, I like Jefferson that much. And redraft, he falls a lot further, which is awesome. And if you want to tell me how you think, what you think about Jefferson while you're at it, that'll be great. But do you like wide receiver, and do you feel comfortable enough that you could land a Monty and a Clyde or a Clyde and, a couple players like Mike Davis? Do you think you could deliver the same kind of winning production from a wide receiver approach from the 12th spot in 2021? Because every year is different. Sometimes it's easier to do than others.
I don't. I'm still not. I mean, we've got a saying on our show, stay water. We don't ever want to just say, well, this is the strategy I'm using.
Yes.
You know, every draft's going to fall different. But in general, I don't like going wide receiver to start. Unless it's dynasty. If it's dynasty, I'm pretty much always going to go wide receiver to start. But in a redraft.
In dynasty, you will? You'll go wide receiver?
Yeah, in dynasty, the
Okay.
lifespan of wide receivers is just so much better than a running back. And when you're in a startup draft, you know, that's where all the good, young, but veteran has already proved it. Wide receivers are scooped up. And then you can grab as many as possible in your startup draft and figure out running back later. That's my mentality in a dynasty startup draft. But in a redraft, the value that wide receiver provides, when you look, it's about opportunity cost, right? Rounds 3 through 7, historically and even ADP this year, generally speaking, there's just so many wide receivers that I think are awesome. And in those rounds, it's like running backs, it could be, they could work out, but they're not as sure. If I go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, then I'm kind of forcing myself to look at running backs, unless I'm willing to adopt a 0 RB approach, which is fine. I don't enjoy that, so I don't ever do that. I can't stand starting a redraft league where I'm scrapping and clawing and hoping that at the end of the season it'll work out. Might be better this year with a 17-week season, but for the most part, I really like the value of wide receivers in rounds 3 through 7. And if I start wide receiver, I'm kind of screwing myself over for the players I prefer in those mid rounds.
I like the water example. I tell everybody, draft to your strengths. You can't use a blanket statement for somebody that is really good at drafting Kelsey in the first round or late or early second versus somebody that botches that every single year. Or if you're good at drafting Mahomes at 3.1 or 2.12 and other people land the next Josh Allen. Strategies depend on the skill set of the owner. And I think that, man, I either hate my wide receiver redraft team when I mock it, or I absolutely love it. It's very risky, but I feel like, you know, if those running backs fall, you know, even if, especially like Najee Harris, which I don't know that you would be able to land him later, like in August, if he lands in a good spot, because right now he's just a name. He's not an actual, you know, but in mock drafts, I've got Najee and Clyde or Najee and Monty. And Monty I want to talk about next, because I saw a short clip that you guys posted on it too, because I've been talking about Monty for a while. So when I saw it, I stopped and made sure I watched the small clip there. I think it was on IG, but it's where Mike was shocked to hear that Monty was the number 4 running back in 2020 in most scoring formats, yet he's being completely discarded. But Nagy has been named the play caller in 2021, which is like the only thing I could think of that's as bad as if like Adam Gase was brought over to, you know, directly monitor Monty's workload. What do you think of Monty in 2021 with that knowledge that Nagy will be calling plays? And do you think if he climbed into like the 3rd round, would you take him, or is he like a, you know, late 3rd, early 4th?
Yeah, he'd probably need to go a little later than the 3rd for me to really want to jump on the David Montgomery bandwagon. Nagy doesn't bother me that much. I'm not saying he's great, but you know, he's had a Mitchell Trubisky problem. He's had a quarterback problem, and that's, you know, play callers always look so much better when their quarterback is good. You know, Adam Gase was great when he had Peyton Manning, and so I think that's really the issue with the Bears. And obviously, at the end of the season last year, David Montgomery was unbelievably fantastic, and it was still Matt Nagy running the show as the main offensive guy there. My issue is last year what we saw was a real great, you know, a perfect storm of losing Tyreek Cohen and having the easiest running back schedule through that stretch. You know, you look, you had Cohen there the first 4 weeks of the season, and that's when you had David Montgomery as running back 37, running back 7, running back 39, running back 30 those weeks. Then when he was the guy, he was pretty much top 24 running back or top 12 running back almost every single week the rest of the way out. So I do think that, you know, with a little bit more competition there, healthier bodies in the backfield, I don't think his workload will be as extreme as it was last year.
Yeah, Monty's tough. I think if I was in a wide receiver bind, I went wide receiver, and I needed a running back, he would be a good bet. But I certainly am concerned about the workload and the way he felt with Nagy just dragging him down. Such a high expectation we all had for him entering his rookie year. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's good value. Do you like, and I mentioned him earlier, Justin Jefferson? I feel like out of all the wide receivers, my two favorite to be the most likely, and I'll ask you the same question. Give me one or two wide receivers that are the most likely that no one would expect to finish number one overall for all wide receivers. So it has to be kind of shocking. But, Jefferson's not all that shocking. I think Lamb probably is a lot more shocking. But those are my two. Who do you think could be number one that would shock people?
Number one overall. So you've got Jefferson and Lamb. To speak to those two guys, I love both players. I think they're great. I think they could potentially be the number one. I still believe that it will be, and I've actually shifted my thoughts since the end of the regular season last year, but I still think Amari Cooper will be the one as far as fantasy wide receiver from the Cowboys on that team. But if we're looking for players who could be the number one overall fantasy option without being drafted like that, some players that might come to mind would be DJ Moore, who I think is going to see, with Curtis Samuel gone, the offense presumably better, possible quarterback upgrade, might be neutral. And the fact that, the touchdowns weren't really there, he would be a name that I would throw out there. Outside of that, crazy, unrealistic, probably not going to happen, but a name that I think has the physical ability and could have the quarterback upgrade and maybe just lights the world on fire would be Terry McLaurin, because
I like that.
You need a little bit of magic. He's got the speed, he's got the physical traits, and now he's finally got a quarterback that can get him the ball. He's been a good fantasy option with trash at quarterback, and now you've got a guy who is going to throw a lot of passes far in the air, sometimes to the other team, but all that means is he's going to throw it more. So I like Terry McLaurin a lot this year.
I like those two. So you heard it, guys. Buy low on McLaurin, buy low on DJ Moore, Jefferson, Lamb. Obviously, been beating that drum for a while for all of you, but I like all those options as some very, very overperforming players given their ADPs. Any idea who could maybe do that at the running back position that's not expected to be top five that you could see being top five?
At the running back position,
we'll say top five, yeah.
That's not top five, who could be top five. Let me pull up my running back rankings, and I will tell you. And I won't just tell you who I think. I'll tell you who it will be.
Okay. Get your pens out, people.
Yeah. At running back, if I were to pick someone that's how far down do you want? I mean, obviously.
Why don't you pick a medium range that might not shock everybody, and then somebody a little bit deeper?
All right, we'll go medium range. I think Cam Akers could do it. You saw Todd Gurley year after year be the number one running back in that system. I think the system is better with Matthew Stafford, and he took over that role. He is exceptionally talented. If he gets that workload that we saw at the very end of the season and into the playoffs, I mean, he could be a guy with a ton of receptions, a ton of rushing touchdowns, and everything in between. So I think his ceiling is exceptionally high. And then as far as someone a little bit further down that could possibly finish that high, this is one where it's all going to be about the NFL draft. I know he's going to be drafted later because he was undrafted in the NFL. But James Robinson was already a top 10 running back. And if he escapes the NFL draft without another high capital running back being drafted, and that is a massive if, but if they are saying he is our guy going forward, I think that the offense is going to be certainly better than last year. More touchdown opportunities for him. And every time you watched if you just, not a lot of people watched Jacksonville Jaguars games last year, but if you did get the opportunity to watch the film, it's just like he's another guy where every time he touched the ball, it was like a really positive play. Nobody could tackle him on first contact, and he can do it all. So he's not going to be a highly drafted guy because of his NFL draft capital and the presumption that the Jags are going to be bad. But he was the running back 7 last year. Coming into year 2, quarterback upgrade. So there's some things, so long as the backfield stays as it is, that could point him upwards.
I like that. And we talked about, that was funny because at the beginning of the show, it was a lot of Akers talk, a lot of James Robinson talk, like literally like an hour spent.
Of your show today?
Yeah, on this one. Yeah.
I was not watching, but
yeah.
Okay, I agree.
So, well, no. I disagree with you on Akers a little bit. I like his talent. I like his talent a lot. I just don't trust the Rams and the fact that I feel like, there's still a little bit of injury concern for me, especially his style plays very aggressive with his own like neck, and he can unlearn some of those things. But I worry a little bit about injury. I worry a lot about the Rams coaching staff, but I love the talent. I think if he got the volume and I trusted the volume to be there, which I feel like coming out of 2021 or 2020, there's a lot of momentum for that. So I do like him, but I feel like he's getting way overdrafted. So the whole conversation that I was having earlier was that I see him going at 9, 10, 11, like first player drafted value. And it depends on the mock draft you're doing, especially Dynasty is going that high. And to me, that's just way too high. But I love James Robinson, and I went on a big rant about how everyone's off their rocker talking about how he's an unrestricted free agent. Those guys never get second contracts. Priest Holmes, Arian Foster, there's always outliers. And there's psychology behind this in fantasy football where you have people that doubt a guy like James Robinson because they didn't find him, and they want so badly for him to fail so that they can be vindicated in their doubt that they initially had, or they're missing him. And James Robinson, off of his 14 games, was 1,000 yards, 10 total touchdowns. The dude looked really good. 4.5 yards per carry, I believe, was the stat average. So give him a quarterback, give him room to run. I absolutely think they're going to utilize him, and I agree with you. He is that top 5 running back potential. And in Dynasty, would you be shocked if I told you, maybe that his Dynasty ADP is like in the 3rd round?
No, that doesn't shock me at all. I mean, it's one of those things where, I just touted him, and I can see a great future for James Robinson if they genuinely, and I believe they should. If I were the general manager of the Jaguars, I'd be using all the capital you have in the NFL draft on every other piece. Your running back room is fine with Carlos Hyde and James Robinson. If they do that, I think that he's got a bright future. But the shades of Philip Lindsay, right? Philip Lindsay came in undrafted, rookie free agent, and was awesome. Was a running back 1 his rookie year, over 1,000 yards, and then it was like, but there wasn't a lot of investment in him. Mm-hmm. They didn't use him as much the following season. He was okay. Then they go out and sign Melvin Gordon. Now he's not on the team because there's no investment. And this isn't even the regime that really brought in James Robinson. It's not the same coaching staff that utilized him last year. So I get, in a dynasty startup, I'm probably avoiding James Robinson because those early picks are so important. I want assured wide receivers early in my dynasty startup. If I just light my 3rd round pick on fire and there's too large of a chance that happens, even if I don't think that should happen, then I would probably avoid James Robinson in the 3rd.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people share that opinion. I just think he's in a safe place there. I don't like him higher. I actually was shocked at my own rankings after I heard he was like, everyone kept debating it on a clubhouse room I was in, and I went and I'm like, okay, let me mock draft this, and I couldn't put him in the top 24, but I still by default love him in the 3rd round. I think J.K. Dobbins is another good one that could potentially crack the top 5. I think Antonio Gibson would be another one if I had to throw out 2 more that you didn't cover. And make no mistake about it, I even said this at the beginning of the show, Akers is capable of it. There's no reason he can't. It just comes down to, do you trust the Rams? They didn't use him for a long time until the end of the year. So my avoiding him in 2020 worked out for the most part, because by the time he got going, it was a little too late for a lot of people. But he's a talented guy, and if he gets the volume, he certainly could be 5 to 10 worthy for running backs. I don't disagree with that. Saquon Barkley, and do you got to go?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. We'll
Okay.
finish this. We'll finish this out.
Okay, we got about 19 minutes here. So Saquon Barkley looking pretty good coming off the ACL injury so far. A lot of film out there of him doing these like amazing lunge jumps, and I have a little experience with knee injuries myself. Torn ACL, torn LCL, torn meniscus, torn MCL, tore my patellar tendon off my kneecap.
All at the same time?
No.
Oh, I was like, that was a brutal.
No, this
that's
is
a brutal
injury.
injury. I mean,
Yeah,
a
this
lot
is
of these are at the same time for Saquon, right?
Well,
he had the ACL, the MCL, and the meniscus.
All of them were the same time, but the patellar tendon.
Okay.
So yeah, I tore all that, but I tore my patellar tendon off my kneecap. And so it was like floating in the lower part of my thigh, and I was like trying to push it back in place, like the 10-second rule. I wasn't sure if it was like the Mahomes, like out of pocket thing,
Mm-hmm.
but up here wasn't a good move.
I would have
but
passed out.
so I have a lot. I'm versed into the injury stuff, but I can say with certainty that when you have a quad as strong as Saquon Barkley's, when you have surrounding knee muscles that a lot of other people don't have, your knee joint itself is tighter from the get-go. So that's one reason Adrian Peterson had such a good recovery, because he trusted his knee. There wasn't compensation involved, like with other players that might not have as strong of a leg to kick off that recovery. I firmly believe that Barkley's going to have that Adrian Peterson, like, I'm not saying he's going to rush for 2,000 yards, but I think he's going to look like he didn't miss a step or a beat at all coming into 2021. And it's so rare to do that. And look at like Dalvin Cook, you look at other running backs, they overcompensate. They oftentimes get hit with like a hammy injury during that season from the overcompensation. But Barkley was, he's been climbing from like 9, 8. He was kind of right around Zeke, where Zeke was a month ago, 2 months ago. But now he's climbing into the top 5 overall in redraft. Do you agree with that? What's your take on Barkley? Are you avoiding him? Break that down.
No, I've got him in my top 5 running backs, and that means he's probably my top 5 picks for redraft. There are definite concerns. The fact that it was the ACL, MCL, and meniscus meant that he didn't actually get surgery, because it was an early injury, which is great for a timeline usually, but he didn't get surgery until October. So that pushes his timeline back a little bit. So I believe it's possible that Saquon could get off to a slow start, slower than you want when you draft him top 5. But I definitely think he's going to be awesome this year. And I would be willing to take a slow start because, I think the Giants offense has the opportunity to be good. You get Saquon back, you add Kenny Golladay, and that should matter for your offense. And Daniel Jones, he's not my favorite, but a lot of the end of the season was not fair to him with the injuries he was dealing with. The fact that I remember one game watching it, and it was like, why are they allowing him to be in the game? Because he had already had that injury, and you watch Daniel Jones. He's an mobile, rushes for a surprising amount of yards, but more important than that, escapes the pressure and rolls out, part of the fumbling problem. But you watched him in this game. This is a quarterback that doesn't know how to play as a statue. He's not a pocket-only passer. And he couldn't move. He couldn't even, move to the right or left a little bit. And I was watching this game this is on the Giants. This guy should not be in the game. So I think that he's been knocked a little bit too hard for what we saw at the end of the season. I like Saquon. I'm in, but he might be an even better trade for target if he gets off to a slow start at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, good point. Quarterbacks. Mahomes, I assume, is your number one.
I like him. I think he's going to be good this year.
I like him.
Yeah.
He's solid.
Solid
number two and number 3 in redraft, and number 2 and number 3 in dynasty for quarterbacks.
Number 2 and number 3 in both are going to be the same. It's going to be Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. I want the dual threat. I want the ability to throw the ball. They're both young enough where for dynasty or for redraft, it's the same. I go back and forth all the time on Kyler versus Josh Allen. I think I've got Kyler ahead, and here's my rationale. Josh Allen was awesome. I mean, he played the perfect season for him. I don't see him going up a notch from what he did last year. Last year, to me, is if I'm drafting him, I hope he repeats. He looked awesome. I don't see why he shouldn't be just as good. But Kyler wasn't perfect. Kyler really looked, he didn't always look great. And I think that he has room to actually improve on last year. I don't think he's peaked yet. So I would take Mahomes, Kyler, then Josh Allen.
And to your point on the Kyler, needing to improve on a lot of different levels, is inefficient, made some bad decisions. That's more reason why I'm saying draft Najee Harris if he's there. Arizona Cardinals, please. I'd say Josh Allen's my number 2 across the board, dynasty redraft. But Herbert's my number 3, and I think especially
dynasty or redraft
in both. And I think if Herbert. Well, I don't know that it's that. I mean, chat. Tell me in the chat if you guys think that's bull. But I think Kyler's right there. You what?
For redraft, I think it's a little hot take. I mean, I get it, right? He was unbelievably great, and taking a step forward, he should be even better. But his rushing that he started with in the beginning of the season completely went away, which is kind of what you expect for someone with his arm talent. But that hurts for fantasy. And then the defense, that was plagued by all the injuries last year, I think will be significantly better. I don't think he's going to have to be in a shootout every single game like he was last year. But I get it. I mean, I get taking the shot on Herbert.
Does your mind
awesome?
Does your mind change if somehow Devonta Smith falls to the Chargers to 13?
Yeah, I'm a big Devonta Smith fan.
Okay.
If he went to the Chargers, I'd be very sad. I would be very sad.
Why?
Because the Cardinals are 3 picks later.
Oh,
and, oh my goodness.
I got you.
If I'm fine, Devonta Smith, I think should be drafted in the top 10. But if he gets that close to the 16, I'm going to be so upset.
Easily. But does that make Herbert your number 2 quarterback, especially in Dynasty, if he gets Devonta Smith? Or let's say Kyle Pitts. Let's say they move up. Because I think, and I know I'm so offensive-minded, and I admit I'm biased. I'm very, very, I always want offensive guys to be taken. But I strategically, I run out of offensive players from this rookie class. So I can't put offensive players in every team. But I target certain teams. I'm like, this is where Kyle Pitts would dominate. Kyle Pitts in a Chargers uniform or Devonta Smith would make Herbert a bona fide number 2 overall. You could make an argument for higher, but I'm just going to stop at 2 and say if Devonta Smith or Pitts are on roster, he is a bona fide number 2 dynasty quarterback. And I'll go as far as to say I agree with you. I love Smith. I don't know why people doubt him. I know that people worry about his 170-pound frame, but he's great at press coverage. I believe led the entire FBS in yardage, touchdowns, and receptions in press coverage. And he also, out of everybody in the FBS, I think had over 600 or more yards than every other receiver. The guy is just phenomenal, dominated everybody. And I don't understand how there's this doubt around him. But tell me your thoughts on Devonta Smith and then circle back to the Herbert thing.
Yeah, Devonta Smith is my clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I totally actually do understand the fears people have. You look at the metrics, and to be 6'1", 170, there's virtually no example of success in the history. Marvin Harrison was near that, so maybe one. It's just not a body frame that has ever worked in the NFL. And so on that alone, and then you add in the usually 4-year prospects at wide receiver are not good bets to be great fantasy. Both of those things don't matter to me at all. Alabama, you're behind 3 other first-round NFL draft picks. Okay, he needed to wait till year 4. It's a unique situation. And when it comes to the body type, I cannot possibly look at film or look at analytics and say that this guy's not just a perfect wide receiver prospect. I'm not going to look at the scale. I'm not going to look at a scale on the ground versus film and stats and say, look, this guy's he's an outlier. So I absolutely love Devonta Smith. He is, I hope, and I think he's going to be great in the NFL. Let's say he goes to the Chargers, and whether that means Herbert is in that conversation for the number 2 in redraft, he wouldn't be for me. I wouldn't call it hot takey if someone put him there. I need a guy who's going to run. If you're not Patrick Mahomes, I need a guy that's going to run a ton to put you at number 2, and that's going to be Josh Allen and Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson.
I understand.
In fantasy, you gotta have the wheels.
And I understand. I mean, I have Kyler right there. I have Kyler at 3, 2, 2, 3. Even my rankings, right? They switch around. I'm like you. It depends on what I ate for breakfast. But honestly, I think this quarterback class is just so deep. Like even Burrow at 8. It doesn't deter me away from going quarterback early, though. And I get coined a lot in the industry as being the early quarterback drafter, when really I just support all avenues of quarterback consumption. So whether it's Mahomes at 3.1, I'm ecstatic about, or if I have to take Josh Allen at 4.01, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But I still cultivate those breakout quarterbacks so that I can make a trade and trade one of them off. Are you never drafting Mahomes at like 3.01? Are you set in like I can get running back and wide receiver value and I'll always stream my quarterback or find a good value quarterback because this class is this pool in 2021 so deep? Or are there times where you do take Mahomes because he is the best player on the board?
So in reality, when I'm doing real drafts, I can't remember other than one time last year, and we're obviously in a lot of leagues, that I pull the trigger on that early quarterback. If Mahomes fell to the middle of a third, I would definitely be willing, looking at the board, instead of taking a tier or 2 or 3 down on running back or wide receiver, I could see myself pulling the trigger on Mahomes. I'm not like anti that. I'm not going to shame that as a concept. But for the most part, if I'm not going to get Mahomes at the very get-go, I am looking more for the breakout or the guy that is disrespected, one of those two that's going to be rounds 8, 9, 10, 13, whatever, and stock up depth at the non-onesie positions where you need flex options, you need bye-week replacements, you need injury replacements, all the time. Quarterback's just so easy to get away with having one on your roster. I need depth at running back and wide receiver.
And one quarterback last year that I was so high on, and he was so disrespected. I don't know if you guys felt the same way there, but Aaron Rodgers, like 9th, 10th rounder. It was insane. He was 37 years old. You can obviously play well past 37 years of age, and he did not lose anything talent-wise. It was a complex situation where Devonta Adams was hobbled. He was out for a big portion of the year. Even when he came back, he was lingering and hobbled. And they basically transformed, they makeshifted their offense into a run-heavy system that fed Aaron Jones, 19 TDs on the ground, whatever that number was. And so he was so doubted coming into 2020, and he was a value. He screamed value. And there's one quarterback that comes to mind this year that fits that mold. And by default, even if you tell people that you're going to take him, he doesn't go because there's so many other names that just by default go ahead of him. But it's Russell Wilson. He's falling to like 8, 9 out of all drafted quarterbacks. And to me, because he's capable of being a 3, 4 overall quarterback, I'm not saying that there aren't consistency concerns or now, there's issues there in-house. Is he happy? But he's got DK Metcalf. He's got Lockett. He's got Carson. This offense is still going to produce, and he's fully capable, in my opinion, of returning to the top 5 quarterback conversation anytime he wants. What do you think about him as the 8th drafted quarterback? And does he feel a little bit Aaron Rodgers to you from last year?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, he's a value there. He's going to be a quarterback 1 for sure this year. He is every year. You alluded to it a little bit, but my issue with Russ is the consistency. When you have someone like Russell Wilson, you pretty much have to play him. You play him every single week. You're not streaming that position. He's in your lineup. The problem is Russell Wilson has a lot of bad games. He has games where he actively hurts you in fantasy, because they just decided to run the ball a lot that week. And now the team is really, they haven't just come out and said we want to run the ball more. They've made the changes. The offensive coordinator, after meeting with Pete Carroll, said, I'm going to quit because I disagree with you as a difference of philosophy. So I definitely think Russell Wilson is going to be, if you look at, you get him at 8, is he going to finish above 8 next year? I would say probably so. So you can call that a value. But in a redraft league, did he help you win a championship? Did he help you win more games than he helped you lose versus getting more value somewhere else and then streaming the position, playing good matchups every single week? So you actually have a higher bar of consistency. I probably won't be going after Russ unless he drops to the 10th round or so. Then you can be like, okay, I'm going to stream with Russ. I'm going to play the right matchups that I like, and not play the other ones.
Are there any quarterbacks you feel like I feel about Russell Wilson that are falling, like Burrow or Hurts? Anybody like that stands out to you that could be an absolute like win a league type land later on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be where he is now when he's drafted. But Jalen Hurts, to me, is going to be a phenomenal fan. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback at the position. Right now I'm looking at him and I see him in the 8th round. I will grab Jalen Hurts in the 8th round all the time. I don't believe that's going to be realistic when everybody comes back, assuming that no Justin Fields drops to the Eagles and they take him. If Hurts is the guy, I think he's going to be much higher. If I'm talking about other wide receivers that I think are going to be disrespected or forgotten, I'm not sure where people will be drafting Dak, but I would very much prefer him over Herbert, who's, your number 2. You look at the receiving core and it's better. It's better than, even if you add Devonta Smith or Kyle Pitts to the Chargers, I think the receiving core is better in Dallas, and the defense is worse, and the propensity to just air it out is there. So he's someone that if he drops at a draft, I'm going to be really excited to scoop up.
I mean, look, we saw him play at an elite level before he went down, and there's no denying those options. And you heard how high I am on Lamb, so it wouldn't shock me at all if he flirted in that 4 to 6 range, no question. And it wouldn't shock me if Herbert took another year to get to that 2 level. Maybe I'm a year early in redraft. We'll see where I rank him closer to August, but I still firmly believe he could drop those kinds of numbers. And when I say he's number 2 on my rankings are also a little bit different because my rankings need to be used with ADP, because where I rank guys is not where I recommend people draft them. So sometimes people will see like Devonta Smith sky high on my dynasty rankings, and then they come out of a draft and they're like, okay, I took him and everyone laughed at me. You told me to take him high. So it's a little different from where I rank them. And that's a tough thing with what we do, right? Because you got to pick. Are you going to guide someone based on ADP, but with some advice of, where the sleepers lie? Or are you going to produce a set of rankings that you predict to be the actual outcome and then advise someone to ensure they use ADP? So that's something I struggle with for all 19 years that I've been doing this. And I tend to stay with the where I predict them to actually fall. So me ranking him 2, I get away with drafting Herbert as late as I can, so let me clarify that. Kyle Pitts, you brought him up. Everyone's talking about him. Everybody's pretending they found him. It's getting a little annoying. Everybody loves him. So tout him up and tell me how high do you think he could be ranked in Dynasty after 1 calendar year?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm the anti-Pitts guy, and it's not because I think he's not great. He's the best receiving tight end I've ever seen. So I'm with everybody. He's unbelievably great. But there's a long track record of first-round tight ends not working in the NFL the way that we hoped. The hype didn't hit. They take a while to come to their own. That's widely known. The Travis Kelce's and George Kittles, they didn't do it in year 1. And they also weren't first-round draft picks. Kyle Pitts is awesome. He's going to be great. But when I'm looking at rookie rankings, rookie startup drafts, I see people talking about Pitts at 2, or definitely top 5. I think we had a footcast today where we were talking about the 109. And, I was saying, well, if Pitts can fall there, and my two other co-hosts, and maybe rightly so, were saying that's impossible that Kyle Pitts could fall there. If I was drafting every single pick, it was 12 Jasons in that league, there's a good chance Kyle Pitts would be there at the 9th spot. I think that's about where I would be willing to draft him, because I just don't like holding and developing the tight ends, and maybe I'm insane. Like I said, he's unbelievably talented, and I think the destination is going to make a difference.
Yeah,
there are a couple of destinations at the top of the draft that he's been mocked to that are not good.
Yeah, I don't like
where
Detroit.
There's already another tight end there. If he goes to the Broncos and he's with Fant and no quarterback,
Detroit,
are you really? Detroit, exactly. You got T.J. Hawkinson and a bad quarterback. Philadelphia needs as many weapons as they can have, and they've had the 2 tight end system. But then it's Dallas Goedert, and there are spots he goes where I think just saying, well, the talent is so great that you got to take him at the very tip top, and he's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that's carried away.
So one of the last things I'll say, I'm playing in a league against Andy, actually, and it's a league with Darren Waller that he's in for charity. Give me a little tip to throw him off during the draft.
To throw him off during the draft, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to throw him off. He's going to smoke at all y'all in the league. He's going to represent our brand, and I mean that's just how it is. I got to represent the ballers over here. This is the one with Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson.
Oh yeah, he's taking Hugh Jackson.
T-Pain.
Is the reason. Yeah, I'm telling you this. Hugh Jackson's the reason Andy's in this league, because Hugh Jackson's been a figure on our show for as long as we've been around. A fun time. I think Andy has, I don't think it's on the set, but in the office, a signed Hugh Jackson autographed picture, because Andy was a Hugh Jackson believer while Mike and I were not, and then it's become a funny bit. But yeah, we're all rooting for Andy. As far as how to throw him off, maybe try to trade him Cardinals or guys that he says he really likes, and maybe he'll pay up a little bit too much for it.
Since we're close, so maybe I'll just have a bullhorn airing outside really loud, pointed in your direction, so that it distracts them. Because I think we're about 2 to 5 miles apart right now.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so hopefully COVID doesn't do anything this season to delay the or postpone games. I guess that would be my final question to you. Do you anticipate a modified season at all? Do you think we get through this COVID thing
I said this over and over and over and over last season when the pandemic was truly horrific and horrible and nobody knew what was going to happen. I said the NFL will start week 1 on time. It will finish the last week on time, and it will go off without a hitch. And it did. Now, a year later, with the vaccine rolling out, these are going to be packed stadiums, and nothing is going to get in the way of the NFL making its money. That's what it comes down to. That's why I said it last year. There's no worry at all that something COVID related is going to stop the NFL from happening on schedule.
Yeah, and I'm ready for everything to get back to normal, because even my radio show, I'm not sure if you've ever heard me on since you were in Arizona, the Red Zone with Russ Bliss. We've been doing it. It was 23 years going, longest radio show in the world, fantasy football terrestrial radio show, or at least top 2. We tried to find other ones. That was delayed or canceled for that 1 year, so it kind of put our streak at it ended our streak. But that should be kicking back off. It's just, man, COVID was a pretty crazy year, and kind of just a tough thing for everybody in general. Obviously, everybody had a lot of I hate to bring our the negative things that it brought to our lives up when people had a lot worse, but it's going to be nice to have the football season back in full capacity, and be able to go to games and things like that. Do you guys go to a lot of games, or do you watch them all from the studio there? That's
we can't
I
go
do.
To games unless they're on Thursday night or Monday night, because we're here in the studio. We've got 9 big screens that we put all the games on, so we're trying to robotically watch every snap of every game. So Monday night, Thursday night, we try to get to a game if it's here.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal on a game like that, like a Thursday night game or something like that. Okay, Jason Moore, thank you for joining me. You were a fantastic guest. Everybody in here had a great time. Plug, not that you need to, because you guys are the biggest fantasy football podcast around and show, but tell people where they can find you and maybe what you're working on, and then you can get on out of here.
Sure. I mean, we're part of the Fantasy Footballers. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, and thefantasyfootballers.com. And of course, draft season's coming up. What we're working on is the ultimate draft kit. We've had it for several years. It's a proven winner. We pour our heart, souls, blood, sweat, and tears into that thing. So you can find that at ultimatedraftkit.com.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you guys are definitely pioneers in the video space. Even somebody that's been doing it as long as I have, like, I look up to you guys, and I think you've done such an amazing job paving the way for everybody that does video and podcasting. It doesn't have to be video, audio podcasting. You really help keep and get and then keep fantasy football relevant for a lot of people. So without you guys, it would be a much smaller industry. I 100% no doubt about that. So appreciate it.
I appreciate the kind words. That's very nice.
Yep. All right. Jason Moore, thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Yep.
Thanks.
So good guy, good crew. Andy was awesome when he came on last year. I had Mike on earlier, Mike Wright, the Hitman, and now Jason Moore. So we've completed that trifecta. Go give those guys some love, fantasy footballers, on all their social media platforms. And, of course, like you said, go get the draft kit. Obviously, you want to get the Sleeper U draft kit as well at sleeperu.com. I mean, if you want to get both, I would then recommend the footballers. No, just kidding. Yeah, great guys. Awesome. I love talking to all those guys. And, they are obviously an inspiration in the industry, what they've done, how quickly they did it, too. It hasn't been that many years that they came onto the map and the scene. So fantastic, short and amazing career and long career those guys have ahead of them. It's fantastic. Like, I think they started in like 4 or 5 years ago. I should have asked Jason what was the exact start date, but it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And they literally have gone from zero to being, the biggest podcast and show out there. Good to know. Dynasty Stonk says, what are you talking about, bro? What's up, Voice of Reason? What's up, Ivan? I'm out of here. Thank you for joining me. It's been another great show. I decided to move over here because I was just sitting in that seat way too long, and I had to get into a different position, man. My back was hurting. 3 hours is a long time. These shows they go by quick, but they do take a toll on your body when you're in the same position the whole time. Thank you all for joining me. The Fantasy Football Show Live. We're here every single Tuesday and Thursday from 4 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. That is 1 p.m. Pacific time to 4 p.m. Pacific time. But just know, we start at 4 p.m. Eastern every single Tuesday and Thursday. You can find me at thefantasyfootballshow.com, or you can go to smitty1.com. Everything I have, you can find at smitty1.com. Media, you wanted to jump on real quick, real briefly, bro, because I got to get out of here real briefly. I'm going to send you a link real quick. Okay, media? I don't want you to get upset at me. So hold on. Media. I don't want that sad face, bro. Hold on. Where are you at? There you are. Okay, hurry up. I sent you a link. Great stuff, brother. Congrats on getting the Clubhouse Champions League. Thank you. I appreciate that, Ivan. Thank you for the invite, for those that invited me. I got a lot of good leagues. That one that I talked about with Jason Moore was with Darren Waller and Hugh Jackson. T-Pain is in the league. Cheo Nash, another musician. I'm going to say Marcus Grant from, I believe, NFL.com or NFL Network. Michael F. Florio is in that league as well, but there's a lot of good names. It's going to be fun. I plan on beating Darren Waller by drafting Darren Waller. So What's up, media?
What's going on?
What do you got for me? You got literally like 2 minutes, and then I'm out of here.
Okay.
Hit me. Anything. Niner talk. Tell me what the Niners are taking. Why?
I wanted to hear your opinion on like Raheem Mostert real quick, like in fantasy.
So I love Mostert. His talent is, right up there with anybody in that like 7 to 10 fantasy running back range in terms of talent and skill. But he's a big injury risk, so you can't draft him there. You can only take him. I would say I've done a bunch of mocks this last week, and I haven't seen him go once in the top 5 rounds. So that doesn't mean he can't be that good. Like a lot of people in here that are Niner, faithful will be like, "Well, you don't think he'll be a top 5 round player?" I'm just saying where his ADP is, and you don't want to discard ADP because ADP will help you take advantage of winning your league. So if you like Mostert as the number 6 running back, I'm not saying he is. You don't draft him there because you don't have to. So 6th round on, I don't even know where his ADP would fall, but it's going to be 6th round on. And does he have the potential of being a top 10 running back per start? Absolutely. Like Mostert is like when he's on the field, it feels like he's going to rip off a 60-yard run almost every time he's on the field. I think Mostert has phenomenal upside at 6-7 round ADP.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. It's just that because he's not able to stay healthy, and I think just the Niners, they need a running back who can actually mostly stay healthy. And
what if you traded up into the first round again? You take Fields or Lance or whoever, and then you trade up into like the 20 range, 21, and you took Najee Harris. Can you imagine? Like,
so I heard like a report about that, like about they've met before or whatever, but I'm not sure if that will actually happen. I would be really surprised because the fact that like Shanahan just, likes he doesn't really draft running backs, especially like in the first 3 rounds. I would say he likes to go a lot of that undrafted route.
Yeah. We'll see. I think Shanahan's doing things that maybe are not out of character for him anyway, but they're bold and aggressive.
Yeah.
So he's kind of in a bold and aggressive state of mind. And I think I didn't really predict you guys to trade up to 3 so early. I thought maybe you contemplated the more pressure was put on, but you did that pretty early. And I'm not saying it's out of character, but it definitely feels aggressive, more aggressive than I thought he would, they would be. So maybe you would potentially go get a running back. Imagine that though. I mean, the funny part though is when I say that to you, a analyst of everything Niners, right? Do you feel like if you had Fields and Harris, even if you gave up a future first rounder in the second rounder to move it up, do you feel like you are equipped to win right now in this year to win the championship this year? Like, do you feel like that better equips you? Or do you think it would be better to have a defensive player?
I feel like I'll go the defensive route just because the fact that's always what the Niners have like done. Like they're very strong on defense, but I wouldn't really mind a running back because I feel like throughout this regime, like they haven't really thought much about offense. They do. They worry too much about defense.
You're ruining my point. You were supposed to say yes, and then I was going to say, then why aren't teams doing it? Why aren't teams getting aggressive? But you just ruined it. But it's okay, Mika. You're honest. That's fine. I want you to be honest. Doesn't mean you won't disappoint me. But I feel like with the Cardinals situation or the Niners, if you told me that the Niners got Najee Harris, I would tell you that makes Kyler better. That makes this offense a top 5 overall offense, and it makes us capable of beating teams like the Niners in the playoffs without even, without anybody being shocked. Motion detected at the front door. Alexa, show me the front door. It better not be you, media. Okay. Who is this? Mailman. Alexa off. I think that you would have a much tougher time defending us and stopping us, and we'd be more capable of beating teams like the Niners with a good defense, good all around team. And so like then that makes that then I asked the question, why on earth would anybody think differently? Like, why do these teams not consider it when it's literally the move that makes the team most potent and most difficult to defend? Like, I get it. You get a guy like Farley or Patrick or Surtain, and you put them on the roster. We are a better team, but I think the offense is what we need to work on as the Cardinals. We need to make sure Murray's healthy. We need to make sure Murray's efficient. And I think adding a guy like Najee Harris, I'm so tired. I can't even speak clearly anymore. I'm gonna hang up, media. All I know is that Najee Harris is the pick, and I think he makes Kyler Murray better, and that's why we need to do it.
I mean, you do have to put up points in this league, and we've seen that from the Chiefs. So.
Yeah. One last thought on the Niners. Go ahead. You have 1 minute, and then I'm hanging up on you.
Okay, I want to switch real quick, but I think that I really do hope we go cornerback in the second round, just because the fact that I think we, like as a team, we're undervaluing that. Just because if you look at the receivers in our division, also pretty like we might even have to face the Kansas City Chiefs again if we make the Super Bowl, and we have to be able to cover those receivers. We have to be able to stick up with Tyreek Hill. We have DK Metcalf in our division, Cooper Kupp.
It is a tough division, the best division in the NFL, in my opinion. No, I don't feel that Pittsburgh and Cleveland and the Ravens are going to give our division a run for the money. No, media, I think we have the Cardinals, the Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks, potentially 4 teams, all 4 could have double-digit wins, and that's going to be crazy. What did I just do, media? I'm banging my desk and I'm knocking stuff off. I knocked a whole bunch of wires behind there. I'm out of here, media. Right. I appreciate you chiming in. We're way over time. I will catch you on the Instagram side.
All right, sounds good. Have a
go follow my boy, media. Give a shout out to your Instagram channel real quick.
My Instagram is 49er Media, all spelled out. Yep.
Get it. Later. All right, I'm out of here. Appreciate every single one of you. Where's my outro music? It's been a long day. I can't even talk clear. Like when you do a 3-hour show, it does wear on you a little bit. I'm getting used to it still. I've done 24-hour live streams, so I definitely can hang, but 3 hours every single Tuesday and Thursday. Like once this becomes Monday through Friday, which is the eventual goal, I'll get in a rhythm. I'll be good with it. I can usually talk without much interruption. I can usually rant like I did the first hour or two on 2 or 3 topics. So no big deal for me. I didn't even get to rookie rankings, which I had on this board. See ya, media. Sorry I hung up on you so abruptly. Peace out, everybody. I will see you Tuesday. Of course, I'll be posting videos on my channel, which you can find at smitty1.com or thefantasyfootballshow.com. But I upload pretty much a video every day. But my live show will be back every Tuesday and Thursday on thefantasyfootballshow.com. And don't forget about my text service, heysmitty.com. Heysmitty.com. Want in-demand text from me? You want to work on your trades? You want to talk about Netflix shows, which I'm almost better at predicting and advising on than I am fantasy football, let me say. Go to heysmitty.com and get yourself the text service so that we can start chatting. I will see you all later. I appreciate you. Thefantasyfootballshow.com. Learn about it.